Good evening, everyone. My name is John Goldberg, and I'll be the hearing officer for tonight's hearing. So thank you very much for tuning in. This is my first Zoom hearing, and so I ask your patience as we work through this. I'll try and be patient with you, and I would ask the same courtesy you try and be patient with me. The clerk for tonight is Cerise Waiters, so we appreciate Cerise managing things behind the scene, and we're very grateful to her. The goal of the hearing is to hear both sides, both the department's information and what they have to say, and then hear any public comment or the applicant or appellant's point of view. My job as a hearing officer is to take notes and make recommendations to the director. At the end of the day, it's the director's decision about what's going to happen with the results of this hearing. So the director is free to, accept, modify, or reject whatever it is I send to him. So I try and be as accurate as possible in providing him the information that he needs to make the decision. So the way okay, it says we can't hear you through the phone. How's this? Is this better? Let's try this again. Okay. So it sounds like we can, so let me start again. So again, my name is John Goldberg, and I am the hearing officer for today's hearing. I work in public works in the project management section. My job as the hearing officer is to hear both sides of the story, to hear the department's presentation, hear the applicant and appellant's information. My goal is to be as thorough as I can in presenting both and giving those to the director with a recommendation. At the end of the day, it's the director's decision to accept, reject, or modify my recommendations, and they will send those out afterwards. The way the hearing will go is we'll call the items in order. The department will make a presentation. There'll be 3 minutes for appellant, applicant, other side to make to speak. And if there's any public comment, we'll have also follow that with approximately 3 minutes. The department can then respond to issues that were raised, and then we'll give the applicants another opportunity. Now it says 3 minutes. My thought is if you're going to take your time to be here, we should hear you out. So I'm not going to hold you to 3 minutes. There's some delays here, but I do ask you to be respectful, particularly if you're number one, and recognizing that somebody that's number 9 is spending their Thursday night here with us also. So I do reserve the right to ask you to wrap it up or eventually close comment if it seems to be going on too long. So we ask you to be concise, make your points, and move on. I also, in making the presentation, I try and get the names right. So if you come up to speak, or if you're going to speak, I ask that you spell your name so I can write it down and present it to the director if we need to. And I like to get the spelling right. I think that's important. Let's see. This is being taped. So it's a virtual hearing. If you want to get a copy of the tape for any reason, it's available. I'll figure out where that is, and I'll let you know. Apparently, I had some technical difficulties to begin with. Our clerk today is Cerise Waiters, so we appreciate her working behind the scenes. So with that, I guess we'll start, and we'll call item number 1. Cerise, do you want to put up the agenda if you can, or we can just go into item number 1? Okay, so item number 1 is called order. Item number 2 is order number 203368 to consider removal of 2 trees with replacement adjacent to 2401 and 2403 Keith Street. 1 tree is located on the Keith Street frontage. The other tree is located on the Bancroft frontage. This is related to expansion of the Southeast Health Center and Behavioral Health Integration Project. Does the department want to make a presentation?
Thank you, and I just want to confirm that you can hear me okay?
I can hear you, but I don't know if I hear you through Teams or through...
Through Teams.
Okay, I can hear you perfectly.
Okay, thank you. I just want to check. Hi, good evening. My name is Chris Buck. and I'm the urban forester for San Francisco Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And before we jump into the first item, I'll kind of cover some general background about our Bureau and about Public Works, and that way I won't repeat it for each individual case. Just stepping back, Public Works is the agency that's responsible for upholding Article 16 of the Public Works Code, which is San Francisco's urban forestry ordinance, which helps protect, enhance, and expand the urban forest in San Francisco. So Public Works has jurisdiction over all the street trees in San Francisco, and with a passage of Proposition E 4 years ago, now known as Street Tree SF, Public Works is responsible for maintaining all street trees, which typically includes pruning trees, planting new trees, planting replacement trees, and on occasion removing trees that are in poor condition. So generally speaking, our mandate at our Bureau is to really try to obviously advocate and stick up for the trees. We definitely value large mature trees because of all the many benefits that they provide. And the urban forest plan calls for the expansion of San Francisco's urban forest. So with that said, generally speaking, our urban forestry staff, urban forestry inspectors, typically if a tree is relatively or healthy, we don't want to see it removed. If a tree is either dead or dying, has a serious disease, or has very poor vigor, and is potentially unsafe or not sustainable, those are trees that we typically would initiate the removal of. Also this evening, we may have cases where we've either approved or disapproved of removals, but the applicant has appealed. And also we have a robust process of public involvement, and so sometimes we approve trees at the staff level which get appealed or protested by the public. So with all that said, the first case for tonight is Order 203368. It's the removal of 2 street trees adjacent to 2401-2403 Keith Street. This is known as the Southeast Health Center in Bayview. So the 2 subject trees I'm going to go through for each case this evening. Typically we show a few photos of each of the subject trees, and we show, in this case, we actually have some plans to show as part of our presentation. The applicant will also present material of their own. So the 2 subject trees, the first subject tree is called a Brazilian pepper tree. It's on the Bancroft frontage. The property owner applied to remove this tree, and the reason for removal is conflict with construction of the new Southeast Health Center. This species is prone to any kind of root disturbance, really causes this species to decline. So in this case, the tree health is fine. It's more, is Public Works going to say no to the removal of a tree that's in conflict with the foundation? And if we can, again, bring that presentation up when you have a moment, we'll show some of the photos that are in the presentation. The other tree is on the Keith Street frontage, and that's a Blackwood acacia tree, Acacia melanoxylon. This tree is squarely in the middle of the public right-of-way, but it too is very susceptible to root disturbance, and typically it causes the tree to decline. So at the staff level, we approved the Brazilian pepper on the Bancroft frontage for removal based on the conflict with the footprint of the building. Typically, a tree would have to be an outstanding tree for us to say, no, we expect you to move the footprint of the building in or work around the tree. The acacia on Keith is a little different. It's not in conflict with the future footprint of the building. It's actually in conflict where, as the project team will explain, they wish to install accessibility ramps. And so the presentation team, we've really asked them to go in quite a bit of detail about the Keith Avenue frontage and why that tree, in their opinion, they couldn't work around it. So throughout tonight's hearing, we'll talk about the need to sort of show that alternatives were considered, if there are alternatives, and what those are. Now, if the tree on Keith was a better species that could handle a lot of root disturbance, and was in better condition, it would be a tree we might recommend for retention. Unfortunately, that species is very susceptible to root disturbance, and we haven't been planting it in San Francisco since probably the mid-1990s. So we have some photos that our clerk is passing through here. Those can be moved along perhaps to the diagrams. The applicant will talk about the number of replacement trees. I do know that they plan to replace trees along Keith Street, pardon me, with 7 trees along Keith. Additionally, there's 90-degree parking on Armstrong and Bancroft, and the pattern is to have a green space at the back of sidewalk on both of those side street frontages. We are currently working with their team to also require street trees to be planted at back of sidewalk in those green spaces. We will actually be able to follow up with you as the hearing officer with what those nodal numbers would be on Armstrong and Bancroft. We're going through some of the slides now that show the public right-of-way in white. And as we move on to the final couple of slides, it just shows the project site and the building that's proposed for construction, along with the 2 subject trees that are circled in red. And then the final slide shows the planting plan provided by the applicant and shows where the existing acacia tree on Keith Street would sort of exist here within the accessibility ramp near the corner of Bancroft. That's the red X shown on the lower left corner of this block, based on the image that's in front of me. So to handle cases, to be consistent with how we've handled similar cases in the past, the tree, the Brazilian pepper on Bancroft, in conflict with the building we approved at the staff level, and the acacia in the public right-of-way that's in conflict with the right-of-way improvements due to its susceptibility to root disturbance. Both of these trees were approved for removal with replacement by urban forestry staff, and during the 30-day public notification period, we received protests from the public. And that concludes the staff presentation for this item.
Very good, thank you. Can I call on the applicant? Is the applicant on the phone? Let's see here. So do we know who the applicant is?
Yes, I believe we'll have Michelle Wu with Public Works. So in this case, she may be on Teams.
Okay.
That might be something that we have before us here.
Okay. If not, I don't see
or the phone call.
Okay, so then we'll do it on the phone call. So if you're a party to this proceeding, I will call on you to speak. At that time, dial 1 and then 0 to indicate that you're ready to speak, and you will be recognized. If you've provided the department with visual materials in advance of the meeting, please let the hearing officer know before you speak so we can put those up and have the clerk put those up. All right, so we'll go to the phone.
And I made a mistake. Michelle Wu's, that's 2 items ahead of us, not this one. So sorry about that. Yeah, continue with your approach. Okay, so we'll put it in question and answer mode. So we're gonna if you're the speaker on this, dial 1 and then 0, indicate you are ready. Okay, I'm not seeing anyone that is ready to speak on this matter. And hi, it's Chris again with Public Works Urban Forestry. I did receive a note about who was going to be speaking for this item. So I don't know But we could go, she may be on the next call, the next line.
Okay, so. All right, so I don't have any speakers. All right. Let me try one more time. Okay, I'm sorry, I don't see any speakers.
Yeah, it looks like we need Ignatius to call in to our number. Cindy Wong with Public Works is gave us a heads up about that. I don't know if and there's no other public comment or speakers waiting in the queue.
I have none. I'm pushing. I got nothing. Okay.
I wonder if we should go on. We could go on to the next item or other public comment and then return. Let's see. Yeah, he says Ignatius Tang should be calling in, but maybe having technical difficulties.
Okay, I see some lines. All right, so
Okay.
again,
I think he's on the line now.
Okay, it says, I will call on you to speak at the time. Dial 1 and then 0 to indicate you're ready to speak, and you will be recognized. So let me. So I see a bunch of people, but no one's. Okay, apparently we're having technical difficulties here.
Is for the folks on the line, are they supposed to dial?
I can hear. Let me. Okay, I can hear you on my cell phone, so I'm not sure why it's not going across the broadcast.
All participants are now in listen-only mode. All participants are now in interactive talk mode.
Yeah, okay, I can hear you, but I'm not sure what's going on.
All participants are now in listen-only mode.
Okay, question and answer.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode. To summon each question, press 1, then 0. You have 4 questions remaining.
Okay, who's?
Hi, this is Linda Richardson.
All right.
And I would like to make a comment quickly. Can you hear me?
I hear you. David, can you hear him?
Okay, so yes, please, I'm having a technical problem, but I just wanted to say that as a long-time Bayview Hunters Point resident and a member of the committee that for decades were instrumental in working with the city and all the stakeholders, it has taken us more than 30 years to get to where we are today. I love trees. The bottom line is that this project is actually creating more trees, and we also have improved our landscape. So it's not just like we're getting rid of trees and we're not replacing them. Also, it should be noted that the city actually now are removing old trees and also non-native trees. So I'm very, I think for the people of Bayview Hunters Point, please do not delay this project any longer. We have a lot of health disparity in the Bayview Hunters Point, and you have all 3 decades. And so please, you need to move this. This is an essential project. We appreciate everyone concerns or whatever, but this is the best we've ever had in the Bayview Hunters Point. This facility will be able to help us to address all the health disparities, and God forbid that because of 2 trees, when we are even adding more, that this project is stalled. Every day that you start this project, please bear in mind that people are suffering in Bayview Hunters Point. So I'm just trying to let you know that you need to move forward with this project, and please do not delay any longer. Your decision, Mayor Yin, you need to publish that immediately. So thank you all, everyone that is out here to support the Southeast Health Center.
Thank you, ma'am. Can I get the spelling of your name, please, so I can get it right? Your name again?
Yes, sir. My name Linda Sadiki Richardson, longtime Bayview Hunters Point, and also needs to be identified as the community that has for more than 3 decades working with the Department of Public Health, and Mr. Chan is leading this effort. We've been working for almost 3 decades to get this spot. Come on, no more delay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. I appreciate you calling, and I apologize to you and to the other people on the line that I'm technically challenged. So thank you for taking the time and
Yes,
your patience.
and thank you, sir.
Thank you. Okay, I'll just take the next one because I'm afraid to do anything else. Okay, is the next person on the line?
You have 5 questions remaining.
Okay.
Hello, can you hear me?
I can, yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. And your name, please?
Great. My name is Lisa Zayas Chen, and I'm representing the Department of Public Health,
Thank you, Ms. Chen.
the project sponsor.
Okay,
Are you ready?
all set.
Okay. I just wanted to let you know that I've been involved with this project in its various stages and iterations since at least 2002. And I can attest to the fact that the project's programmatic and physical design, as well as the footprint and layout, have been thoughtfully discussed and debated at DPH and DPW along with our various stakeholders, one of which you just heard on the phone. This includes our Southeast Health Center Advisory Board, the City's Civic Design Review Committee, and the Bayview Hunters Point Citizens Advisory Committee. During this lengthy time, we've had to navigate and balance our many goals and priorities on a constrained site. We have a 40-foot height limit, an irregular lot, the need to connect and integrate with an existing facility, and a program that requires a very specific amount of room to facilitate DPH's delivery of a more integrated and modern healthcare model. Many at DPH and in the community would have preferred a larger or taller clinic with a greater set of programs or more room on the site for other amenities. Not to mention having more parking directly adjacent to the clinic to facilitate maximum and easy access. But I really also wanted to call in today to assure the concerned members of the public that are worried about us taking down these 2 street trees, that we do have a plan that includes extensive new site improvements, and that they were also an important part of the mix. They were not an afterthought nor a last-minute addition. It's a purposeful element of the project expressly meant to connect the clinic's interior via glass facade to the outside natural world, light, color, trees, plantings, and the park across the street. While the project is not able to keep the 2 trees in question, please be assured that the department is committed to the maintenance and upkeep of the extensive new landscaping. Finally, the Southeast Health Center Advisory Board has submitted a letter of support for the project to move forward in its current form, and especially if there is continued technical difficulties. I believe you have this letter, and it would be great if it could be read into the record. It highlights the concessions they have made, including the incorporation of ADA access from both street corners as part of the landscape design that they would like to be retained. I'll be on the line if there are any other questions for the project sponsor.
Very good. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. Let's see here. So we'll call the next question, and just a reminder, dial 1 and then 0 to indicate you're ready to speak. And then there is a 20-second delay that we have to recognize.
You have 5 questions remaining.
Hello?
Hello, go ahead. Yes, there's just a delay.
Yes, hi. Okay, hi. My name is Cliff Lowe, and that's L-O-W-E.
Okay,
I'm the landscape architect on the project.
okay,
And I just want to explain some technical things that the new street trees that we're locating on Keith Street are, basically we work very closely with FNTA and Public Works in terms of locating as many as we can just to create a nicer street frontage and a pedestrian setting. They will be irrigated, and I guess just a quick comment on the existing acacia tree. These are typically short-lived trees. The older they get, the branches get brittle, and they do, have problems with branches falling down. And so we really want to, we worked hard at seeing ways that we keep it, but just even making the sidewalk grade conform with current code means root pruning and doing other things, which these trees do not react very well to. And so the essence is just really creating a street frontage with a larger canopy tree that will help unify this frontage with the park across the street.
great. Thank you very much for that information. Thank you for calling in, Mr. Lowe.
All right, thank you.
Very good. So with that, we'll go to the next question again. There is a 20-second delay, so just be aware of that.
You have 4 questions remaining.
Hello,
Go ahead. May I have your name, please?
my name is Oscar James.
Oscar James, Mr. James?
One religion, 74 years.
Okay,
I'm also a member of the Southeast Advisory Board, who has been looking at this particular project for the last year or so. Anyway, we're at the point of removing those 2 trees for our new expansion. Also, we know that there's going to be additional trees added on to the property. So we actually need to accept this proposal that is presented before you today, and so we can go on and have this new facility built for our community, which is badly needed. Thank you very much.
thank you very much, Mr. James. Thank you for taking the time and calling in. Okay, so we'll go to the next question, and again, there's a little bit of a delay.
You have 3 questions remaining. Hi, this is Karen Pierce, K-A-R-E-N-P-I-E-R-C-E. I'm a native San Franciscan and a Bayview homeowner. The Southeast Health Center was my medical home for many years, and for a number of years, I was on the community advisory committee. I have been part of the planning of this expansion for over 20 years, and want to support moving forward as soon as possible. Unfortunately, there was not funding in the past, and now that we have funding, it comes after the last of the
women who went to Congress to get the funding to get this in the first place have passed away. She was over 100 years old and continued to fight for this community right up until her death. We need to honor that kind of commitment, and we need to acknowledge that the design of this is the result of a successful community-driven and community-led effort. Removal of the 2 trees is a part of that design, and we're not celebrating the removal of the trees, but want to recognize that there will be additional trees. But my main comment is that while the objection may be a pro forma objection to removing trees that are live, but the removal is part of the environmental justice that is owed to this community. We have waited way too long to get a full clinic, and this needs to move forward as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Pierce. Thank you very much for calling in. Okay, we'll go to the next question or the next comment. And again, there's a delay.
You have 3 questions remaining.
Hi, can you hear me?
I sure can. Go ahead, please. Your name and spell it.
Sure, my name is Josh Clipp, K-L-I-P-P.
Thank you, Mr. Clip. Go ahead.
Yeah, the first note I want to make is that this is my first Teams public hearing participation, and this is incredibly confusing. And I think from an accessibility standpoint, not at all compliant with what the ADA requires. Moving on, substantively, I've heard some discussion about site improvements and tree replacements. I don't know if that was part of Chris's presentation because it was incredibly difficult to visually follow along with that, so I would appreciate some clarification on what exactly that is, because it wasn't at all clear in the presentation. Secondly, I just want to point out that the Bayview, from a public health perspective, has one of the worst rates of pollution and asthma in the city, and healthy mature trees are one of the best allies in the fight against those public health issues. And this may not seem like a lot, a couple of trees. San Francisco already has the smallest urban canopy of any major city in the United States, and the Bayview is one of the worst neighborhoods even within that small canopy. In San Francisco, in 2014, San Francisco had a 13.7% canopy. That was when we rolled out our urban forest plan. That's now down to 13.4%. So we've actually lost trees despite this urban forest plan. And you add to these trees, these are just seen here, we add that, you've got another 80 that the PUC is taking down on the Headwater plant over on Evans Street. And you've got another 2 dozen that are coming out around Good and Evans in the new community center there. So now we're close to 100 trees, over 100 trees. Another one at Tulare, which is later on down this agenda. So this isn't just a matter of 1 or 2 here or there. This is hundreds and hundreds of trees coming out from cities that can't afford it, that just declared a climate emergency. So I've been a volunteer planning for nearly 12 years, and I personally planted around 700 trees in San Francisco, and these 10% of which aren't going to make it to maturity because of how tough it is for a tree to establish in our urban environment. And I lost count of how many hundreds of those were in the Bayview. We've got 9 years left before climate change becomes inevitable. We need at some point to stop doing city projects, business as usual, that we'll just cut the trees down and plant them later. It's not sustainable, it's not healthy, and it's a shame that we can't build a health clinic in one of the poorest, most suffering from the biggest health crisis without cutting down trees. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Clip. I appreciate you calling. And what I'll do is I'll ask Mr. Buck to go over I believe there is extensive planting of additional trees and greenscape, but I'll ask him to go over it after we finish with the public comment. So with that, we'll go to the next question. And again, there's a delay, so just be prepared.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Hello? Is there a caller? Hello? Okay, with that, we're not hearing you, so if you are trying to call, I would ask you to call back in. There's one caller left on the line, so we'll take that person, and then if you need to call back, we'll have you call back.
You have one question remaining.
Hello?
Hello, go ahead. And would you please repeat your name?
I want to make a presentation.
Okay,
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. There's a little bit of an echo there, sir.
Say it again?
Yes, we can hear you, but there is a bit of an echo. So you're probably hearing both from your phone and from the Teams. So if you could mute the Teams.
Hello? Okay. I can hear you. There's one echo there, sir. My name is Ignatius Tsang. I'm the senior architect. Can you still hear me?
Yes, Mr. Chang, if you would mute the Teams, then we can hear you on the phone.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Go ahead, sir.
Okay. If you would mute the team, then we can hear you on the phone. I just did.
Okay, there's a little bit of a delay. Go ahead.
The spelling of my name is Ignatius.
Okay,
Last name is Tsang, Tsang.
okay,
I am the senior architect with the Bureau of Architecture. And can we have slide one, please? The existing Southeast Health Center is located at the corner of Keith Street and Armstrong Avenue. The yellow rectangle. The new addition is located south of it, the orange square. The new main entry of the clinic is in the new addition on Keith Street. The blue dots represent the path patient will travel to the clinic. Go to slide 2. The existing clinic was built in 1979. The size of the exam room, bathroom, and nursing station are small. The layout and the adjacencies are not effective for today's patient care. The new addition is paid for by the 2016 Health and Safety Bond, which was passed by a margin of 89%. The new seismically safe two-story addition is to expand both the medical and behavioral health services in the community. The new addition's layout and size is based on best patient care practice. Slide number 3. Patients coming from the south, including patients use public transportation and patients park their cars along Bancroft Avenue, will approach the clinic from the corner of Keith and Bancroft. An ADA ramp at this corner was specifically asked by members of the community. This new ADA walkway will allow people with mobility issues
new entry of the clinic. An alternate location to the proposed accessible path to avoid the tree would not only create a less direct route, its visibility will be adversely affected by the tree in question. The acacia tree at the corner of Keith and Bancroft cannot be saved because it does not tolerate root pruning well. The width of the new clinic addition cannot be changed because it is dictated by the layout of the clinic module and design. The building location cannot be moved because it is already placed on the required side yard setback line. The new clinic addition is set back from Keith Street to create new landscaping and an open plaza to promote health and wellness. The Brazilian pepper tree on Bancroft Avenue cannot be saved because it does not tolerate root pruning well. We propose to replace the 2 trees with 7 new trees. Thank you. That's my presentation.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Sang. I appreciate that. Let me look to see if there's any other callers. I see no callers on the line. So with that, I'm going to ask Chris Buck if you would say something and respond to Mr. Clipp's concerns. Go over the landscaping again.
Thank you. This is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. I heard Mr. Clipp's questions during his public comment. So to confirm, the 2 subject trees are street trees proposed for removal, both within the public right-of-way, one on Bancroft, the Brazilian pepper, one at that corner within the right-of-way on Keith Street. That's the Blackwood acacia. The replacement tree plan is 7 trees along the Keith Street frontage, bordering and wrapping onto Armstrong.
Your conference is now in question and answer mode.
Additionally, there will be street trees along the back of sidewalk where there is a landscaping pattern. Due to the 90-degree perpendicular parking, we can't allow street trees to be planted at the curb on either Armstrong or Bancroft. For the purposes of providing the hearing officer with the exact number, in the next several days, we'll confirm the number of replacement trees at the back of sidewalk on both Armstrong and Bancroft. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Chris. So with that, we'll close public comment on this, and I will write this up and make a recommendation to the director. If we can, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda. So the next item is order number 203369. It's the removal of 4 street trees with replacement located within the Sunset Boulevard Greenway. Would the department like to make a presentation?
Yes, this is Chris Buck, Urban Forester with San Francisco Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. We received the removal application from colleagues with Public Works Landscape Architecture. This project is related to rain gardens that are being installed in the Sunset Boulevard Greenway, which is the area located between 36th and 37th Avenues. We'll have a presentation pulled up in a moment that shows the 4 subject trees. So this project is a partnership with Public Works and the Public Utilities Commission, and we've identified collectively locations along Sunset Boulevard where rain gardens, swales are being installed to capture and retain and redistribute stormwater runoff. We'll have a project person from that project tell us more about that after my presentation. The 3 subject trees are, there's a total of 4. So there's 3 Pittosporum or Pittosporum crassifolium. They're multi-trunked trees. They're understory trees that sometimes start as bushes and then establish strong leaders. So we have images in those that'll be shown here in the presentation. The fourth tree of the four is a Monterey pine tree that has a strong lean. The tree actually experienced a partial failure. There's root heaving at the base of the trunk. And this tree has such a strong lean, we can tell it's a failure and not that it's grown this way because the branches are actually not parallel with the ground. They're actually angled towards the ground, and that just shows us that this tree did experience a root failure, partial root failure, and does have a strong lean. So as I stated earlier at the opening of the presentation and the hearing, these trees we feel are not sustainable. When we looked at the other trees throughout the Sunset Greenway and we looked at potential locations for this project to place rain gardens, we really looked at preserving and protecting all the really large stature trees out there, such as the Monterey cypress, the Monterey pine, other species, as you see in the background, the much larger trees. So these trees were identified through a very detailed process of working with many colleagues to reduce as much as possible impacts to this infrastructure, the stormwater retention swales. These are images showing the 3 Pittosporum crassifolium trees. There's no common name. Again, they're bunched in 3s. They're in various states of structural growth. They have multiple stems. But again, these were areas where we felt that the impacts to the project would be least impactful. We're seeing now on screen those 3 trees along with the 4th tree, the leaning Monterey pine. And I want to be clear that that pine tree has been leaning like that for a while. Definitely a good candidate for removal. So it's removal of 4 trees with replacement, and to be consistent with how we've handled similar cases, and particularly the rain garden trees there, we did prove these based on their poor condition and the overall objectives of the project. And then during the posting period, the public appealed. So that's how we got here tonight for the hearing. With that, in a moment, we're going to turn the presentation over to the applicant, and we'll pull up, I believe they may have a presentation for this Sunset Boulevard Greenway as the next caller. But that's the application before us, hearing 203-369, removal with replacement of 4 trees in the Sunset Boulevard Greenway.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any public speakers on this or the applicant? If so, please call in. Okay, I see one. So I will take that call and then we'll go from there. The caller, just be reminded that there is a little bit of a delay before you get a chance.
You have 1 question remaining. Okay, can I be heard at this point?
You certainly can. Would you please spell your name for me, please?
Sure. My name is Solange Guillaume. My first name is spelled S-O-L-A-N-G-E, and my last name is spelled G-U-I-L-L-A-U-M-E. And I work in the Landscape Architecture Division of Public Works, and I've been working on this project for Sunset Boulevard. And I'm just here to talk a little bit about the project and provide a little more reasoning behind why the trees are being removed. I only have 1 slide to show, but I can tell you a little bit about the project. It has kind of 4 things that I'm going to go through. One is a little bit about the project, our site prep and why the trees were impacted. And then Chris Buck mostly covered all of the tree conditions that we've been encountering. And then lastly is tree replacement plan that we have in progress right now. So the project is to establish 30 rain gardens from Irving to Terravall along 37th Avenue, which is on the western side of Sunset Boulevard. And these rain gardens, there are approximately 1 to 4 per block in that stretch. We'll be capturing and infiltrating stormwater runoff. In this project, we'll be planting 9,000 plants approximately in all of these rain gardens. So it, in and of itself, we're also planting a lot of, we're creating a lot of additional plant matter and plant material as part of this project and part of the infiltration needs. And the stormwater capture over annually is projected to capture and infiltrate about 9.4 million gallons of water. So that's coming off both of the hardscape from Sunset Boulevard and some of the softscapes in the median. And this water, as it is pulled into these rain gardens, will also be helpful to support the mature trees that are around the rain garden. To speak a little bit about site prep for this project, before these rain gardens were sited, as Chris Buck had mentioned, I and many of my colleagues walked to the boulevard carefully and worked through survey processes to locate the rain gardens so that they would have the least impact on the landscape, and especially the least impact on mature trees. We worked to prevent the removal of any large and mature high-value Monterey cypress and pines. And removal for us is really our last resort. Our hope is always to be able to save these trees. And initially, and as we have gone through the process, the ones that were, the trees that seemed the least viable, especially in the short term, are the ones that we're now kind of considering that need to come out for these rain gardens to be established, which will have a really positive long-term impact on the biodiversity and the water of the boulevard. Last 2 points. So the tree condition, this stuff basically covered it. The Pinus radiata are leaning and they have these roots. The pittosporum was likely planted by birds and not actually by people, and so its kind of irregular shape is not really conducive to longevity in the case of what we're looking at. And then lastly, for tree replacement, one of the things that we're hoping to establish over the long term is a larger tree replacement plan for the entire boulevard, and that's actually in process. Public Works has been collaborating with Climate Action now to plant a really large number of trees over time. Marcus Major, who's the head of Climate Action now, has received funding from the PUC as part of this replacement project, and that's actually funding that's helping to support internships and interns who are helping to take care of new trees. At this point, through the grants that Marcus has received, almost 300 trees, new trees have been planted along Sunset Boulevard. In the coming months, he has an additional 130 trees that we'll be working together with to plant with Marcus. So the one slide that I believe I suggested being shown just shows a sample block with some of these replacement trees. So we may be removing 4 for the rain gardens, but there are actually at least 430 trees that will be in the ground by the end of this year. And I think that's it that I have. That's all that I have for comment.
Great. Thank you very much for taking the time to call in. Are there any other callers for this item? Any public speakers on this item? So we'll give you a minute in case you want to call in. Hearing none. Oh, I see one. So we'll take the next caller. There'll be a little bit of a delay.
You have 1 question remaining.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead. May I have your name, please?
Yeah, this is Josh Cook again, KLIPP.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Clip.
Sure. So on the project specifically, there seems to be sort of a slow drip of tree removal for this project. There was a lot of public outreach over a lengthy period of time on this project. That Public Works went out and met with the neighborhood and the supervisor's office to go over the scope of it, which included tree removals. And now this is the second tree removal hearing we're back here, which is adding more trees to be removed that were not part of that public outreach. And I'm just wondering how many more tree hearings are we going to have where there's additional trees thought to be removed for this project that weren't part of the original scope. More importantly, I want to point out that the platform and the method of this hearing is horrifying and incredibly difficult to participate. Chris, I can't tell what you're talking about because your visuals don't match up with what's being shown on the screen. I couldn't even hear the last minute or so of Chris's presentation because there's way more than a 20-second delay. The city's landscape architect was well over a minute into her presentation on the phone before Chris's presentation on Teams even ended. So I don't know what he was talking about. I can't listen to two people at the same time. This is really frustrating. I can't believe that this is an acceptable way of running a public meeting with meaningful public participation. And based on all of this, unfortunately, I'm going to be submitting objections to the entirety of this procedure. There are public meetings the city is holding every single day remotely, and I've participated in dozens of them, and it's hands down, the worst I've experienced. And that's all I'm going to say about that.
Okay, thank you very much. Are there any other speakers in this matter? Okay, seeing none, then we'll close the public comment on this. And we'll move on to the next item. It's order number 2033371, removal of 13 trees with replacement along Bayshore Boulevard. So with that, would the department make the presentation, please?
Thank you. Good evening. This is Chris Buck, Urban Forester with San Francisco Public Works. And in a few moments, you'll begin seeing the slides for this hearing item 203-371. So we received an application for the removal of 13 trees along the off-ramp of 101 as you enter San Francisco. The 3rd Street exit into San Francisco as you head north from the San Francisco airport. That is the subject site. And if we could kind of rewind back up to the start of the presentation, I think we have a satellite image showing parcel maps and the location. So we're going to have our clerk kind of scroll through the images as I describe the individual trees, what species they are, and also the condition, and a little bit more about the project and our process for review. Again, there'll be other project folks that talk more about some of the bigger picture aspects of the project. But again, the application is for the removal of these trees. You'll see an aerial photo that shows the subject site. So this is block lot 5017 and then lot 018. The parcel property used to be owned by Caltrans and is now owned by Public Works. And it was the subject of a tree removal hearing a couple of years ago at the very tip corner of the project near Mead. So this is at the corner of the off-ramp and Mead. So the 13 trees, we went through to evaluate them. One of the 13 trees is in good enough condition where it doesn't meet our typical standard for approval at the staff level. 12 of the trees, however, as I'll go through in the presentation, were in poor condition and were trees that Public Works felt would be better off removed than retained. And so I'm going to go through trees 1 through 13. We have multiple images that will be shared as I go across the presentation. There are a number of eucalyptus trees with very poor structure and reduced vigor in their canopies. Some of them have signs of large branch failures and or poor branching unions. So this is the first tree. It's on a kind of a slope above Bay Shore, and we'll move through these 13 images. Tree 2 has had a number of large failures and has poor structure and poor vigor. Tree 3 is actually the result of, there was an old stump there, a tree was there and it sprouted up unchecked. And so now there's 3 trunks of a tree that's sprouted up there. Tree 4 is a eucalyptus with poor structure, poor vigor, and a number of branch failures. Tree 5 is a very small Victorian box tree. It's quote unquote volunteered, meaning it seeded itself. This is the image you'll see that is a bunch of garbage near the base of it with the tall grass. So that's the tree 5 Victorian box tree. Tree 6 is another eucalyptus that's a bunch of sprouts, 5 or 6 sprouts that have come up based on after the previous tree likely failed on the hillside. Tree 7 is another grouping of sprouts. It's difficult to see from this image, taken from above looking down at the off-ramp. Tree 8 is the result of a bunch of sprouts from the original trunk. So again, these sprouts are very weakly attached and are prone to fail. Tree 9 is a eucalyptus in poor condition, closer to the road. This is the image of the tree over the sidewalk. Part of the tree has failed, and there's decay and injuries at the base of the trunk. Tree 10 is the one tree that at the staff level we felt was in good enough condition to actually deny removal of. This is the image where you'll see a fence behind it and a small building, and there's a blue tarp draped over the fence. Tree 10 is very vigorous. I will say the structure is a little poor in that about 30 feet up, it branches into 2 to 3 main stems. But the tree overall, you know, I would say the structure is fair. The vigor is good. This was a tree that we spent a lot of time with the project team really trying to understand what they could do to try to retain it. And the project team will talk more about that. And then the last of the 13 subject trees is tree 13. And this tree has very poor structure, has had a number of stem failures, and also has decay and injuries near the base of the trunk of the tree. So when the project team and the community approached us about the trees and the conditions, essentially what we did is went out to evaluate those conditions to understand which of these trees we felt were viable and strong enough to remain on site. Just a reminder, I may have skipped over a tree. Tree 11 and tree 12 and tree 13 also are eucalyptus trees with very poor structure, branch failures, and existing structure that's very prone to fail. They also have poor vigor and some dieback in their canopies. The project team is going to talk much more about what's going on behind the scenes with the project. However, I can highlight a couple of things, such as the plan on their part to plant 33 replacement trees. One thing that's important to note is we are in a climate emergency, and our Bureau is aware of that climate emergency. Mature trees do sequester more carbon, so it's going to take a long time for replacement trees to begin capturing that same amount of carbon. That said, the trees are in very poor condition, and so at the staff level, we approved 12 out of 13 for removal. And that concludes the staff presentation for this item.
Very good. What I'll do is go to the phone calls. Looks like we have 2 callers. So I'll get the first one. And again, reminder, there's about a 20-second delay.
Hi, this is Michelle with San Francisco Public Works. Can you hear me?
Yes. Can you spell your last name, please?
Sure. My last name is W-O-O.
Okay. Thank you very much.
And may I ask the hearing clerk to help me pull up the slides, please?
I think she's working on it now. Miss Wu, and what department are you assigned to? Landscape architect, project management?
I'm with project management with Public Works.
Okay. Okay, I think your slide's up.
Sorry, I'm calling in via the phone, so I might have that lag going on.
There's a 20-second delay, so don't worry about it. Take your time.
All right, I just don't want to get too far ahead without folks following with me. But hi, everyone. My name is Michelle with San Francisco Public Works. This is a visual rendering of our Bayview Gateway project that you see on the screen. Thank you for pulling it up. This is a landscape project at the corner of 3rd and Mead, and includes the installation of the beautiful Bayview letter signage. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. This is a community-driven pilot project for the Bayview Hunters Point neighborhood, and it's intended to really beautify and accentuate the southeast entryway to the city. Sorry, can we go to the next slide, please? There is a lot of community support for this project. It's a collaborative effort between the Bayview Hill Neighborhood Association, the HOK, and San Francisco Public Works. Initial community meetings started as early as 2016 for this project. And as Chris alluded to, the fact that this project location, the pilot project that was on Caltrans land, so the project team worked for many years to get this relinquished to the city, and it only became official a few months ago. So on the screen now, I believe everyone sees our original project request, which was basically to remove 17 trees on site. In attempts to minimize the number of trees to be removed, the project team, next slide please, we've worked to reduce that removal count from 17 to 13. Sorry, next slide please. And sorry, could we move to the next slide please? Of those 13 trees, 12 trees have been deemed unsafe and require removal due to safety reasons, and 1 tree is deemed to be in relatively fair condition for now, but is in conflict with our Bayview signage. So next slide, please. The project team has reviewed various alternatives to avoid removal of this 1 tree in conflict. At the top left is reflecting that the project team attempted to move the signage towards the west, towards 3rd Street. But as you can see from the top left image, so small. Could we go back, please? Could we move back to the alternative slide, please? So the top left slides are showing that the signage would be moved into the sidewalk, into the pedestrian path of travel. The top right corner of the slide, if you could please go back 1 slide, please. That was our attempt to move the slide, shift the signage towards the south. And that unfortunately moved the sign into Caltrans right of way, which we don't have authority to build on. And it also placed the signage in a sloped area, which was visually ineffective. Correct, this is the slide. And the bottom drawing, the bottom alternative here, we also attempted to move the signage towards the north, towards Mead Avenue. However, that also showed it also shifted the signage into the sidewalk area of Mead and 3rd, so also impeding pedestrian traffic. Sorry, could we please forward 2 slides? So at this time, the project team is requesting the removal of 13 trees instead of the original requested count of 17. And the project, I wanted to highlight, is going to be replanting 22 additional trees, as well as 11 red buds to activate the space for the community. Public Works will be collaboratively working with the Bayview Hill Neighborhood Association to basically maintain this plot as landscaping for the community. And we're on to our last slide, please. If we can move to the last slide. So the vision of this project, the mission, is really to help. Sorry, there's a lag on my. It's really to increase the visibility of the identity of this culturally rich Bayview neighborhood, and the funding is in place, community support is in place, the relinquishment is in place. So we really respectfully request everyone's help to please grant this tree removal and allow this project to proceed as soon as possible. Thank you very much. Okay,
may I ask you a question, Ms. Wu?
Yes.
So I'm not sure what the director will decide, but so clearly, your preference is the tree to be removed. should the director decide not to remove the tree, what would happen to the signage? I mean, I know you have several
That would lead the project basically back to the drawing board, because the funding that we have is in need of being used within a limited time. And the options that I've shared with you basically allow the project to carry out this vision of that you see on your screen here.
Okay, and you noted that moving the one tree would still have one of the letters within the drip line of the tree. And what is the impact of that?
The letters basically are in one, although they're individually placed, they're intended to be one unit, to be moved as one unit, because due to the curvature of the roadway, if you move them any other way, it'll be very difficult to see the letters and its full effect. Okay,
all right, very good. Thank you very much for the presentation and for calling in.
Thank you.
Okay, let me see here. Okay, there's a couple more callers. We'll get to the next one. And again, there's a 20-second delay, so be prepared. Hello? Okay, I'm not hearing anything, so I'm going to take the next caller, and if for some reason we missed you, please call back.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Hi, can you hear me?
Sure can. Can you please state your name and spell it, please?
Yeah, this is Josh Clip again, K-L-I-P-P.
Thank you, Mr. Clip. Go ahead.
I'm going to play for you right now what is happening on Teams.
Very difficult to see the letters and its full effect.
Okay. All right. Very good. Okay. So there's way more than a 20-second delay here. I'm going to get to that in a second. So here we are talking about 13 more trees in the Bayview, and I've already given you my perspective on the continued deforestation of the Bayview, already one of the least canopied neighborhoods in the city in the name of development. It was super hard to follow along. I heard something about a tree being removed for a conflict of signage. I would love to know more about what that was, but I really have hardly any way of understanding what she was referring to. I think I saw something about some letters, alphabet kind of letters there that spelled out Bayview, and I really hope that we're not removing healthy trees for signs that we've deemed may otherwise be visually ineffective. And then I just want to go into some of the technical difficulties here. While Chris was talking about tree 8, Teams platform was showing an image of tree 1. While he was talking about tree 10, the Teams platform showed an image of tree 4. If I listen on the phone, I can barely hear Chris. If I listen on Teams, then I may miss the opportunity to make public comments because there's hardly any time to wait to get in there. And I really wish I could have heard Chris's entire presentation, but then there were auto announcements that were rolling over it. And I don't blame Chris for that, and I sure don't blame Therese. This is a platform issue. Every other department in the city is using Zoom. Even the Board of Appeals is using Zoom webinar. Anyway, so the landscape architect here, she's talking about, when she started talking, we were still looking at tree 15 on Teams. I don't even know how to participate in something that is this disjunctive and disjointed. So I'm objecting to any kind of removal that isn't done because the tree is unhealthy or dead or hazardous. Period. Thank you.
All right, very good. Thank you very much for calling in. We'll get the next caller.
You have 3 questions remaining. Hi, this is Rowana.
Hi, can you please, yeah, we can hear you. Can we please state your name and spell it? Ruwana, can you spell that for me in the last name?
It's spelled R-O-A-N-A, last name Tirado, T-I-R-A-D as in David O.
Got it. Thank you very much.
So I'm glad that the slides are up. Hi, my name is Rowana. I'm with the Landscape Architectural Group at design firm HOK. We've been working as pro bono collaborators for the past 6+ years with the Bayview Hill Neighborhood Association, who initiated and spearheaded this effort many years ago. So members that live in this neighborhood and San Francisco Public Works. On this first slide, you can see our public project website at San Francisco Public Works has been posted and available to the public for the duration of our project. Go to the next slide, please. I wanted to share a bit more about our project story, public community engagement outreach efforts to date and design for this gateway open space. The Bayview neighborhood in Southeast San Francisco is a historically underserved neighborhood at the intersection of many urban challenges, including access to open space. So when you enter San Francisco from the north and the Golden Gate of Presidio, you know that you're entering the city. And when you enter San Francisco from the southeast on the 101 shown in the previous slide, you might not know you're entering San Francisco or the Bayview neighborhood. And in fact, a lot of visual representations of San Francisco and the city and tourist maps often omit Bayview altogether, as if it's not even part of the city. And so this Gateway Open Space project has had a huge public community engagement effort, with meetings happening regularly over the past 6 years. All meetings have been well attended by residents with lots of feedback on what the community envisioned for this Gateway Open Space. We've had a series of working group meetings that came out of a task force from the initial public visioning sessions and a wider community effort hosted by Supervisor Cohen. So the design and thought behind this effort has been widely shared. If you keep scrolling to a few more slides, very off, so it's hard for me to follow here, but can you scroll forward, please? So I'll try to keep speaking even though the slides are pretty off here. So the identity, character, and uses for the gateway of the open spaces were thoughtfully and collaboratively thought with community members. They chose imagery and brainstorming keywords on idea boards for the themes for the community. And from those idea boards and the working sessions, we came up with our 3 themes of expression and participation, ecology and seasons, history and culture. So the community really wanted to pay homage to a rich history of agriculture, working class culture, as well as adding vibrant green plantings and mature trees to this open space site. So that was really thought about in the design. Again, this is a community-born effort, not a development. It's from the Bayview Neighborhood Association. So these 3 themes, helped us develop what we called our kit of parts, which is essentially a set of elements that would help identify this space, such as special planting, signage, essentially pieces that could be assembled at the chosen site at meet and serve. So in the next slide, we show the existing site today. And hopefully, if we toggle to the next one, we can see how we propose to make this open space a vibrant space with orchard tree planting and other native trees and understory planting, and these mosaic letters that really identify the Bayview, meant to slow down traffic and enhance pedestrian safety in this area. Just keep scrolling down. Right now you're looking at the existing site. So there's been a lot of effort by the community and design team to place the letters and propose trees so that this identifying feature is unveiled and experienced by the driver entering the Bayview neighborhood. So again, not a development effort, but this is from the community residents that live here in the Bayview Shell Neighborhood Association. Came up with this design, worked hard together to make actually more vibrant plantings and more trees planted here. Here you can see the mosaic tile, and that's kind of paying homage to working class culture in the Bayview and working with our hands. So again, a real community born effort, not a development. Keep scrolling down, please. So yeah, we carefully placed these letters so that you could select, you can see these letters kind of unveiled as you come around the corner. And again, this is to really make this a gateway site, so a way for folks to know that they're entering San Francisco, to know that they're entering this vibrant Bayview community. In this view here, you can see that there are many, many trees that we're planting. In fact, there'll be 33 new trees. We're proposing to remove mainly invasive eucalyptus trees and replace with 33 new trees made up of native redbud, oak, Quercus agrifolia, and bay laurel trees. So really carefully selected for the project for their mature growth and plantings that are endemic to this area. If we keep scrolling down, hopefully, it's very delayed as everyone knows, so trying my best to present here. Can we keep scrolling down, please? Yeah, please keep scrolling down. So it's very delayed, so I'll try to talk through some of these. Hopefully they can continue to scroll down, but as Michelle presented in her last presentation, if we look at different placements of these letters where they can still be viewed for folks coming around the corner, they would be kind of in conflict with different areas of the site. So if they were placed in the next, hopefully we can go to the next one. But if they're placed, down and south, the letters would extend to the sidewalk, which is not acceptable. And even if we shifted the letter E footing a bit, it would be within the tree drip line, and you wouldn't be able to see these letters. So we just, and so those are a couple of alternative placements. Hopefully we can scroll through them. But yeah, in closing, I guess I just want to say that this project has had an enormous amount of community support of residents that live in the community by the Bayview Neighborhood Association that want more trees in their neighborhood, and that's exactly what this project is doing. We're planting 33 new trees endemic to this area. Again, so Quercus agrifolia, oak trees, bay laurel, and native redbud. So we really, been thoughtfully planned to consider the rich history of this community.
Okay, very good. Anything else?
And I'll end there, even though there's still many more slides here that
okay.
didn't get shown.
Very, very good. Thank you very much for both your time and for your patience through all this. I appreciate it. Okay, we'll go to the next caller.
You have 2 questions remaining. Hi, this is Marcia Malou, and I'm the president of the Bayview Hill Neighborhood Association. Can you hear me?
Yes, Ms. Malouf, can you spell your last, would you be so kind as to spell your last name for me, please?
Certainly. It's Marcia, M-A-R-S-H-A, is the first name, Malou, M-A-L-O-O-F as in Frank.
Great, and you're speaking as the head of the association or as an individual?
I'm the president of the Bayview Hill Neighborhood Association. And this was a brainstorm of ours that started many years ago, as most speakers talked about, as a community-led effort. And I want to say that the reason why we wanted to take over this space is because the space was owned by Caltrans, and they did absolutely nothing for the space. It was a dumping ground and trees falling into the roadway. It was horrible. The city could not do anything to the property until the property was transferred to the city's ownership. We went through all of those steps with a lot of community process to get that done. And now that we're at the part of trying to organize and implement the vision that the community has, we're now trying to put the trees and the landscape the way we'd like it to be. This is really a landscape project, but that's only because we want it to look inviting and welcoming. The city has decided that there can't be anything on that site that's productive other than a few trees and some understory, because they don't want to draw for pedestrians to be in that area because it's very unsafe with cars exiting the freeway. This project is really about slowing down the traffic, introducing a person to the San Francisco and Bayview neighborhood. To that end, we've come up with this design for the letters that would be placed in the space. Now, over the almost 10 years it's taken us to get this to this point, there's lots of garbage, different kinds of trees that have just been thrown over into that, all kinds of orphaned plants that don't have any rhyme or reason. Now that we have a viable plan for this space, we want to put as many working trees as we can, and that's why we've chosen the bay laurel tree, so that we can actually use the bay leaves as the trees mature. Also, these big letters that come into view will only do so when you slow down. And that slows the traffic and makes it much safer for the school that's located 2 blocks up from this site. Now, one other thing I'd like to say, and that is the previous caller on both tree removal items had said about they don't want any trees removed. They characterize the Bayview as some marginalized area that, you know, we need something from someone else. And I'm here to tell you, as a resident who's lived here for 25 years, that we have a lot of trees in the Bayview, but what we don't have is plans and planned development and growth. This is part of that plan. This is another example, this caller states, another example of systemic racism and racist policies exposed by those who don't even live here that want to talk about what we need and what we can't have. Get out of the way, let us develop our neighborhood the way we want it to be, and let people know the joys and the beauty of coming into the Bayview. Again, I want to say that HOK, the Department of Public Works, and the Bayview Hill Neighborhood Association have been working on this and have broad community support from one tree to put 30 trees that are better suited for the area is a fabulous opportunity for San Francisco. I'm finished.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your patience, and thank you for taking the time to call in. All right, we'll get the next caller.
You have 2 questions remaining.
My name is John Nolte, and I am calling in.
Okay, Mr. Nolte, can you spell your last name for me, please?
Nulty. I'm a native San Franciscan and over 50 years. And for Bayview to say that they are, or for the president of an association to bash another person in San Francisco.
Mr. Nolte, let's just talk about the issue.
Well, they should be doing that as a public comment. Okay.
Right.
That's getting to.
Okay, let's speak to the issue.
This is coming off of a freeway ramp, and so therefore you already know that you're going into San Francisco because you're exiting a 3rd Street ramp. So this thing about coloring and signage up to slow down and so forth. The real issue is you're on a freeway. Those trees that are currently there are protecting the south for the houses behind the property, and that's why it was Caltrans. This is the right of way Caltrans had at the time. Now it moved over to the DPW, and so DPW decides to take away the eucalyptus trees. Eucalyptus trees are being taken out all over the city, and they are native trees in San Francisco that were put in over 100 years ago. So to take them out is wrong. And like I said, I'm a native. So to continually see the eucalyptus trees taken out is a very poor judgment, because they are currently now at the location saving the noise from the freeway, the pollution from the freeway, and helping the underserved Bayview that has a high asthma rate that protected from pollution. So, I find that these allegations of these trees need to stay. They can still plant on the property, and put in the flowers and so forth, but the trees should stay.
All right, Mr. Nolte, just to clarify, are you in support of all 13 trees, or some of them, or just the one that the Bureau of Urban Forestry has deemed to stay, or what? Just so I would
appreciate the one that they already deemed to stay, but I also want the other 12 to stay too, because as he pointed out, those are trees were trees were of the roots. The branch, they were grown out of a stump of trees that were priorly there that were cut down. So obviously, this is like an afterthought of a tree that was a stump that was there for 50 years, and then somebody chops it down, and then the tree grows again because they take out the stump.
Oh, okay. All right. Very good. I just wanted to clarify. Thank you very much for the call, sir.
Clarify that those trees are a lot older than a eucalyptus tree has a lifespan of over 600 years. So don't go telling me you should be taking out this tree.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Look it up.
Thank you. All right. So we'll get we have the last question on. If there's anyone else that wants to comment, please feel free to call in.
You have 1 question remaining.
Hello, my name is Michael Hammond. I'm a long-term resident of Bayview, and I'm also a patient at the Southeast Center.
All right, Mr. Hammond, Hammond, is that correct?
Excuse me?
How do you spell your last name? Hammond?
No, sir, it is Hamman.
Got it. Thank you, sir.
Okay. This discussion of these 2 trees is rather bizarre, because although these trees will be removed, they are going to be replaced by more tree cover than it's there now. That corner and those two streets, Keith and the other street, will have much more tree cover once this project is finished than it has now. So the notion that somehow we're losing something is erroneous.
Okay.
We're gaining something. We're gaining more trees and much larger tree canopy than exists there now. Furthermore, to impede or impinge upon this project is detrimental to the people who live here and certainly to the people that go to the Southeast Center, because that is one of the premier health centers in the city, and it is long overdue for this upgrade. To further postpone this upgrade is, well, it is harmful to the people that live here and work here. And I just don't understand this controversy at all. We're getting more trees, we're getting more tree cover. It's going to get a renovated health center. My view is it should move forward expeditiously. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hammond. So just to clarify, this was in regards to item number 1 on the agenda. We moved past that, but I understand your comment, and I'll include those in the recommendation to the director.
So I'm not able to comment on that item?
No, considering our platform, we've made note of it, and I will include it in the conversation with in the recommendations to the director. But I just wanted to make note of that on the record so that everyone understood.
And so my comments pertain to the Southeast Health Center, and I'm sorry if they're out of order,
No.
but I've been waiting a long time
Yeah.
to make these comments.
Yeah, there's no problem, sir. We'll take care of it. Thank you for your patience and with everything. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, with that, I have no other comments on this item. So we'll move on to the next item, which is order number 203372, removal of 3 significant trees on private property at 1000 Lombard Street. Chris, can you make the presentation?
Yes, thank you. Chris Buck, Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. I'm the urban forester, and I'll be reviewing the application, reasons for removal, and then the staff level assessment and decisions around it. So the subject site is 1000 Lombard Street, and it's right there at the bottom of the crooked street at the corner of Leavenworth. So again, this is order 203372. We received the application for removal from the property owner for the removal of 3 significant trees that are on private property. And I just want to take a moment to explain what that means. This section of our ordinance was revised in 2006 so that trees that are on private property but within 10 feet of a public right-of-way receive the same protections as if they were street trees. So in this case, we go through a similar process that we would as if there were street trees, with the idea being that these trees near the right-of-way really do provide benefits to the public at large. So these 3 trees are located within 10 feet of the public right-of-way along Lombard and Leavenworth. The 3 subject trees are, one is a Monterey cypress on Leavenworth. The second tree is Pittosporum undulatum at the corner of Lombard, that's tree 2. And tree number 3 is a bay tree, Umbellularia californica. So I'm going to go through the reasons, the overall assessment of the conditions of the 3 trees, what our staff level determination has been. The tree on the Leavenworth frontage is located just a few feet above the retaining wall that's along the Leavenworth sidewalk, at the back of sidewalk. It's a Monterey cypress. It's the evergreen conifer that has wispy foliage on the branch tips. The vigor of this tree is not in question. The issue with this tree is how large it's grown in relation to the base of the foundation of the property. Generally speaking, at the public works staff level, for street trees, sidewalk trees and sidewalks, we would typically expect the city and or property owner to repair a sidewalk. We don't really consider regular sidewalk to be substantial property damage. In this case, we're talking about property damage to the retaining wall and potentially to other aspects of their foundation. So at the staff level, our decision was to approve this tree for removal. I also want to note the location of high voltage lines above this tree. So this tree is being kept abnormally small. This tree typically would be much, much taller than the building behind it. But the tree has been pruned repeatedly by PG&E, and I'll talk more about that with the other two trees. At the staff level, our decision was to approve this tree based on the overall size of the tree and the fact that it is outgrowing the space where it's located. You will see those images showing the lower trunk located just within a foot or two of the sidewalk above the short retaining wall along Leavenworth. Tree 2 is a Pittosporum undulatum or Victorian box tree. This tree is located a much higher up above Leavenworth, above that retaining wall in the side yard of the home. This tree is actually in extremely poor condition. It should be lush and evergreen broadleaf species, but is very sparse and has a lot of dead branches and dieback throughout the canopy. PG&E is required by law to keep vegetation away from power lines, and so this tree has also been pruned pretty much on an annual basis by PG&E by law, and it's nothing we can do. They are required to do that. This species is also experiencing something known as Pittosporum undulatum decline, Victorian box tree decline in California. And so this tree, we believe, is not going to be returning to good health anytime soon. The third tree that's subject of this application is the bay tree. The bay tree is located in the very corner. This one is a broadleaf evergreen species. It actually smells like bay leaves. If you're hiking around Muir Woods and you can smell something that smells like bay leaves, that's this tree. So this is a very large tree, as you can see it. Item located as number 3 when you get to the image. At the bottom of the stairs, you can see this is where one of the areas where tourists gather to take photos of the Crooked Street on Lombard. The issue with this tree is that it is a multi-stem tree, as you'll see in some of the next images. Multi-stem trees have poor unions. Multi-stem trees that have poor unions with decay present, extensive decay, are really prone for structural failure. In this particular case, this was most likely not the original tree. The original tree, which may have been native, that tree is long gone, and what happened is that it sprouted, and it sprouted multiple trunks. So the images that you see here identify the several stems and where they join. There's sitting water where there isn't decay. We met with the arborist on site for the applicant, the property owner, and watched as he inserted long metal objects like screwdrivers into the base of the trunk of this tree. Our concern about this tree is the potential for structural failure at the base of the trunks where all these stems join. There's extensive decay, and during the inspection of the tree, we also jointly sounded the tree, and you could hear essentially how hollow several of the stems are. Again, the vigor of the tree is not in question, it's the structural stability of the tree. Regarding the replacement tree plan, the yard is packed with a lot of trees, so there's only room for one replacement tree up above the high retaining wall. There is, however, room to plant a replacement street tree and to also replace the street tree that's dead in the sidewalk. And so we've spoken to the applicant, and they've agreed that they would plant a new street tree as shown in the blue square and replace the dead tree in the sidewalk, water those trees for 3 years to get them established, in addition to planting one replacement tree within 10 feet of their property line so they can become a future significant tree in the future. But based on how we've handled similar cases, we found both trees above the property to be in poor condition, as well as the cypress around the corner on Leavenworth. And so our urban forestry inspector approved the trees for removal, and during the 30-day public notification, the public protested. And that's how we got here this evening. Thank you.
Very good, thank you. So let me go to the calls to see if there's any callers. I don't see any callers. Are there? I'll wait a minute to see if anyone wants to call in on this matter. And just for the record, there is a report from consulting arborist for the property owner that has been submitted. So we have that with their recommendations. Oh, I see one caller now. So let me take them as the.
You have one question remaining.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Go ahead. Can
Thank
you?
you. This is Josh Cliff, KLICP. All right. Two things here. First, from a procedural standpoint, I'd just like to point out that respectfully, to hearing officer, you had no problem with the president of the neighborhood association coming after me personally in a public hearing and making a public record of that in her public comment and saying, I don't know what's at stake here in her community. She doesn't know where I live. She doesn't know anything about me. She sure doesn't know my economic status. She had no problem making all the assumptions, putting on my record. And then when the subsequent caller, Mr. Nolte, tried to stand up for me, he stopped him and said, it's not what we're here to talk about.
And Mr.
We're not here to rail on other commenters. Please apply that to everyone.
And Mr. Clapp, let me apologize. That got out, and when after it did, I thought about it, and so then when the next caller made the comments, I stopped him. So I apologize that I didn't stop the first caller. You know, I gave perhaps too much leeway. So that is my fault, and I accept responsibility for that, and I apologize.
I appreciate that. The irony was I was listening really carefully to what she was saying right up to that point and feeling a lot of compassion for it, and she did that. Anyway, but I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Well, no, it was my fault, and I let that go, and so I thought better of it than the next caller. Anyway, go ahead, please.
Secondly, I'm just going to put on the record here a request that this hearing be continued until the department has a platform where the public can see and hear the presentation at the same time. This is more than a small delay. It is a really long delay, which makes it impossible to know what anyone using visuals is talking about. And because visuals are an integral part of these presentations, we're talking about pictures of trees showing whether they're healthy or not, where they're failing or not, where they're placed, where things may conflict with them, and none of this can be ascertained based on because of the incredible lag between the visuals and the audio presentation. And because the public can't see the visuals and hear the explanations at the same time, it's really impossible to piece together the city's reasoning for approving or disapproving a tree removal. And without having an understanding of the city's reasoning, the public is deprived of meaningful participation in this hearing. So I'm putting on the record right now a request that we pause this hearing and take it back up at a time where this isn't happening. There are departments all over the city that have figured this out, and I'm pretty honest that this is happening right now, but this far into our shelter in place. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will certainly make your comments known to the director. I mean, just as a procedural matter, we're going to complete the hearings, but I will make your comments known, and they're on the record, and it is a taped line, so it is available. Are there any other callers on this matter? Any other comments on this matter? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next one, which is order number 203373, removal of 3 street trees with replacements adjacent to 1298 Howard Street. Chris?
Good evening. Thank you. Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. On the urban forestry for our division that reviews tree removal permit applications. We received an application for the removal of 3 Chinese elm trees, Almus parvifolia, adjacent to 1298 Howard Street. This is a corner property that's at 9th Street in South of Market. This is order 203373. So the 3 subject trees are, as I said, all Chinese elm trees. Generally speaking, we really look for development and developers to retain existing street trees as part of projects and essentially protect them in place during construction. When we do evaluate the applications, however, we set that aside as we just look at the general health of the trees. So of the 3 trees, tree 1 and 3, the tree in the far left and the far right, when you're looking at the site physically on site, those trees are in relatively good condition. They don't have any major injuries to the trunks. The branching is relatively okay. Tree 1 does have a co-dominant leader, meaning it has 2 stems of equal size, but it has a very wide union, which makes it less prone to fail. Now, this species is very fast growing. So one thing to acknowledge is right now, these trees have been here for years without having any physical building directly up against the property line. There were buildings there, but they were low and set back. This is the species that we plant up and down Folsom from the Mission up into Bernal Heights that really seem to like explode out with new growth each spring. So it's a tree that you need to have on a very frequent pruning cycle, you know, typically every couple of years. And again, the trees are on the 9th Street frontage of the property. They're all in a row. The outside trees are in fair structural condition, good vigor. The tree at the staff level that we approved for removal is tree 2, the middle tree. This tree is much smaller, but the reason for approving it at the staff level is that the trunk itself is riddled with canker. It's called anthracnose canker, which essentially thwarts and kills the stem tissue along the bark of the tree. You'll see it in some of the other images here where it's very, it's like a blackened, it looks like it was almost on fire, but it hasn't been set on fire. It has some cracks throughout there. Those cracks, it's a hardwood, but over time those cracks worsen. So when our urban forestry inspector evaluated these trees, based on how we've handled similar cases, he approved the middle tree for removal just based on its current health, denied the request of the 2 outer trees. Regarding the application's plans for replacement, the plan is to plant 6 total replacement trees on the 9th Street frontage and 7 replacement trees along the Howard Street frontage. This would be a total of 13 new trees if all 3 trees were approved for removal. At the staff level, we denied the removal of 1 tree, and the applicant protested or appealed the denial of the other 2. And when we posted the 1 tree we did approve for removal, the public protested. So what we call this is a partial denial, in a sense that our inspector partially denied the application, approved tree 2, denied tree 1 and tree 3. And just to speak a little bit about the reasons for removal, stated on the application is conflicts with the installation of vaults, below ground vaults that would be placed within the sidewalk. Generally speaking, Public Works typically has a policy of asking project sponsors to place vaults in the building. There are also other policies such as the planning department who wants to see activation of ground floor commercial space, which then you can't do if you have vaults. So there are some conflicting policies around vaults. That said, at the Bureau, we really are here to try to put our blinders on and just say to ourselves, are the trees relatively healthy? Or are they not healthy? And so 2 of these trees we believe could be retained as part of the overall project and remain. However, the applicant is stating that those are the 2 locations where vaults need to be installed. Throughout this section, our clerk has passed through a number of the slides, and I think I'm going to wrap this up. I do believe that there'll be an applicant calling in to talk more about reasons for removal and their own reasons for pursuing removal of all. But I wanted to share what we had. I shared their planting plan, the location of the proposed vaults, and photos of the trees as they exist today on site. That concludes our presentation.
Very good, thank you. Question, and then I'm sure I'll get it from the applicant. There's one caller on the line, but the question I have is how would those trees, if they were to remain, integrate with the proposed planting plan and aesthetics of the design of the landscaping for the, or the streetscaping for the project?
Good question. Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. When existing trees remain, one challenge for sure, what the impact, and let me be clear, at the Bureau of Urban Forestry, we never approve trees for removal based on aesthetic considerations, but the spacing is certainly a fair question. So when there are large trees, it's difficult to get younger, smaller trees to become established, because if they're being shaded by a larger tree, the new tree essentially senses the lack of light from the overhanging canopy. So there would be some potential spacing impacts due to retaining the trees. That would be less of a concern of mine. I think one thing we'll hear, which I didn't touch on, but the excavation of this site will be touched on, I'm sure, by the applicant. But other than the vaults, the primary concern, you can see on one of these images, the brick building in the background. When there's a building right up against the sidewalk, it doesn't leave much room for the tree to grow in those directions. So it will really fill out laterally along the sidewalk and then out over the road. But there will be a significant amount of excavation within the private property, I'm assuming, for basement construction and building development, which is a potential impact. And I don't know if that's something the applicant will address in their presentation. So okay. that would be the challenge for on-site management when this building is constructed, is what would those impacts to the roots be? And then having the building very close to a large stature tree. So there would be it wouldn't be a walk in a park. There would be a lot of regular maintenance to prune the tree back from the building. So that's a little bit more about that interaction if the trees were to remain.
Okay, all right, well, let's see what the callers have to say. Okay.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Hello, my name is Frank with I'm with Lead Design Partners, the architects for the development at 1298 Power.
Okay, can you, I'm sorry, sir, you're a little muffled. Can you state your name again, please?
Yes, can you hear me now? It's Franco Zaragoza with Lead Design Partners.
Okay, can you spell your last name for me, please?
Zaragoza.
Okay, go ahead, sir, thank you.
Yes, so I'd like to just go over a couple points of the project. Number one, I'd like to provide just a quick overview of the planned project.
Okay.
Secondly, I'd like to speak sort of on the conflicts that have resulted in these trees and the reason why we're proposing to remove them. And lastly, I'd like to speak on behalf of the improvements of the sidewalk and I'd like also to let the landscape architect to jump on and speak on behalf of the benefits that we're providing for the site. So to begin, 1298 Howard is a mixed-use housing development. We're providing 129 residential units with on-site affordable units. We are assisting with the much-needed housing stock that our city desperately needs during this housing crisis and under this pandemic. The project resides at the corner of 9th and Howard, with also a frontage on the Toma. We're providing an active storefront corridor along 9th Street, which also wraps around to Howard and a small portion along the Toma. We're creating a very safe, active environment with the use of new street trees, widening of the sidewalks, working with San Francisco MTA. And the project is also providing a new pedestrian mid-block alley that supports a neighborhood and pedestrian feel with trees and plantings along the residential corridor, having unit entrances on both sides. On the Toma, we're enhancing the Natoma frontage with residential units that conform with the San Francisco Better Street Design Guidelines, promoting friendlier and safer streets. Secondly, I'd like to jump in and speak specifically of the constraints that led to the removal, potential removal of these trees. So we have utility requirements in making this a buildable and viable project, and also due to the basic configuration, which was noted previously, does provide some concern in remaining the health of these trees. We have encountered a utility conflict with the approved PG&E transformer vault design. In short, we have reviewed the site constraints to see if other possible areas would allow for successful installation of the vault. But to summarize, we have several constraints. On the Toma, the sidewalk is not wide enough to contain a transformer. On Howard, we have conflicts that don't have enough length that potentially conflicts with the existing street signaling, the future bicycle signaling, and existing utilities along the street frontage, leaving us to focus on 9th Street. And when we look at 9th Street, our configuration also has some conflicts at the direct corner of Howard and 9th, leading us to focus more towards the other corner where we are existing at Natoma and 9th. So I'd like to basically to say that, we've worked with San Francisco Planning Department, and, they're basically pushing for active storefront street facades. So we're left with a condition where we have to place a sidewalk vault that conforms with the current PG&E requirements. And that's basically why we're here. We're providing pretty much the only viable option for the project to move forward with these locations of the vaults, which basically created the conflict. Lastly, I'd like to emphasize that the project definitely has plans to provide a better street environment and a tree canopy, a much wider tree canopy that currently exists. Like I mentioned before, we're working with San Francisco MTA, and we're widening the sidewalk so that these existing street trees would potentially be in the middle of the sidewalk, which would create some irregular circulation patterns as well. So, due to beautify and make more uniformity, we are proposing to provide new street trees that would enhance the environment at this area. And basically, lastly, I just would like to leave the conversation and allow Cliff Lowe to speak more directly on the landscape aspect of the project.
Okay.
I just wanted to state the history of the vault.
May I ask you? When you're gonna widen the street on the sidewalk on 9th Street with another flag going out. So is the parking lane moving out, or is it just the parking lane being eliminated?
Parking lane is moving out.
Parking lane is moving out. Okay. Okay. And has that permit been approved by the Board of Supervisors for the street improvement, or has it been submitted?
The sidewalk legislation has been, I believe, approved and submitted.
Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
All right, with that, let me go to the next caller.
questions remaining. Hello, my name is Liz Parks, and I'm here to support the project located at 1288 Howard Street.
Miss Parks, I'm sorry. I just so I get your name. Liz, L-I-Z, Parks, P-A-R-K-S?
L-I-Z Parks, P-A-R-K-S.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm sorry. Continue on.
All right. I think it's absolutely ridiculous that someone can protest the removal of 2 trees when our neighborhood is getting 15 new, beautiful, well-designed trees and street landscaping in their place. The development is helping San Francisco promote a safer and more pedestrian-oriented community. There are so many pros to this project, some being on-site affordable housing, wide sidewalks, 5 times more trees now than there are and were before, and new commercial space. Please approve the removal of these 2 trees. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much, ma'am. Thank you for calling in. I'll take the next question.
You have 4 questions remaining.
Hi, Josh, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir. This is a Josh Clip.
Yeah, do you want to go ahead with Cliff first? Because I know he's on the applicant side, and I'm more than happy to.
No, if you're here, go ahead. I'm sorry, would you tell me your name, please?
Sure, yeah, Josh Cliff, K-L-I-P-P.
Okay, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, there are a lot of reasons to protest removal of 2 trees, because every development project that we've had so far here is these 2 trees here, or these 12 trees here, or these 13 here, and once again, we have the smallest urban canopy of any major city in the United States. We are facing an existential climate crisis, and we also know now that trees are one of the few things that clean our air, reduce air pollution, which in effect also reduces our fragility to global pandemic. That's our respiratory illnesses. As far as the replacement or replanting goes, that is statutorily required under Article 16 of Public Works Code. So that's not a gift by the developer. That is a regulatory requirement. I also want to just point out that look at this block. Soma, I've talked a lot about Bayview being one of the least canopied neighborhoods in the city, and Soma is the least canopied neighborhood in the entire city. I believe it's somewhere around 5.5%. And compared to the rest of the city, that is even worse than worse. When you look at that entire block, these are literally the only 2 healthy trees on that entire stretch. And people are sitting underneath it because it is the only shade. So while we're about to go into a drought and climate change and burning up our city, we're going to go ahead and take out the only shade on the block. Developers have got to do better. They need to find a way to work around and preserve these trees. We've got all this wide open frontage, and it's hard to believe that there's absolutely no other spot for these vaults. I would question whether this vault placement was checked against the city's vault placement schedule, because the vault placement schedule gives preference for above ground vault placement when it conflicts with existing landscapes such as healthy mature trees. My guess is that an above ground vault wasn't considered because it's not aesthetically pleasing and takes up square footage on the ground floor. That's my guess. And I would also say I've heard a lot of developers over the years talk about what the good things that we're doing for the city, and I don't disagree with that. I think we've got to find a way to do it for these things to work together. We can't just keep killing trees, saying we're doing it in the name of housing, and yet not considering the quality of life of people who are living in those homes. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Very good. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for calling in and your patience. All right, we'll take the next question.
You have 3 questions remaining.
Go ahead, please. Just tell me your name. If you would mind, state your name and spell it for me, please.
Hi there, my name is Alana Swartz. It's ALANNASWARTZ.
Thank you, Ms. Schwartz. Go ahead, please.
Yes, so I'm here to speak in support of the project located at 1288 Howard Street. I want to start by acknowledging the removal of the 2 existing trees is undesired but that there are so many pros to this project, and I want to encourage the board to approve the removal. I am here to name a few wonderful components of the project. There is widening of the sidewalk to promote a pedestrian-oriented neighborhood, the beautiful and well-landscaped mid-block alley, and our neighborhood is getting 15 new street trees. The project sponsor has jumped through hoops to make this project work, and they are working very hard to add 129 units to our extreme housing crisis. Please do not prevent this development from happening. Thank you for your time, and please approve the removal of these 2 trees.
Great. Thank you very much for calling, ma'am.
No problem.
You have 3 questions remaining.
Hello.
Hi, good evening.
Good evening.
My name is Dominic Tringali. That's DOMENIC TRINGALI.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tringali.
All right, so I'm calling in support of the project located at 1288 Howard Street. I think the most obvious reason to support the removal of the 2 trees is that in exchange, we're going to get 15 cohesive, beautiful trees that are going to line both 9th Street and Howard Street. This development is going to make the neighborhood more pedestrian friendly, beautiful, and the new storefront and 15 new well-planned trees will absolutely help beautify the neighborhood. This project has on site affordable housing, and we need to encourage more affordable and well-designed buildings in our city. Thank you for your time. Please approve the removal of these 2 trees. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for calling in, Mr. Tringali.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Hi, this is Cliff Lowe.
Hello, Mr. Lowe.
Yes, LOWE.
Got it.
And I'm the landscape architect on the project. And just want to make a few corrections. I believe there are 8 new trees along Howard Street and 6 new trees along 9th Street, so that's 14 in total.
Okay.
And then the other point is that the sidewalk widening was dictated by MTA, and so it wasn't generated through the developer.
Okay, but it is going to be widened,
Yes, yes.
and that's 9th Street.
Right. And what we're also proposing is, with these trees, the new trees along 9th Street, actually we're replacing the elm, the Chinese elm, because we understand that it's a very windy street, just as it is on 10th and 8th, and the wind is really howling through here. The elm isn't exactly a tree that really takes that kind of condition, especially with their weak limb. And we're proposing more of a wind-tolerant tree and something that will also go in and create the stature you want in an urban street for San Francisco in these kinds of environments. And that's the Lobosnum concordance. And then along, and these will be irrigated by, cared for by the developer of the project. And along 9th Street, Howard Street, we're also adding a landscape median strip, which the developer wanted more greenery out in the public space. And we're trying our best to protect that with a raised fencing element that will protect the planting in the ground. And the trees there are an extension of what is planted mostly along Howard Street, which is the magnolia trees. And so, we're trying to unify the neighborhood with the tree cover and with a tree that would also be sustainable.
Okay.
And that concludes my discussion.
Very good. Thank you for calling, sir.
You have 2 questions remaining.
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, I can, sir. Go ahead, please. Can you tell me your name?
Perfect. Thank you so much. My name is Carlos Tito, Carlos TESO. And I'd like to support the project on 1298 Howard Street. First of all, thank you so much for looking after our neighborhood. And I'd really like to support the project because I find it really hard to purchase a house in San Francisco. And I think with this project, we'll have 17 below market housing that it will give a lot of fresh air to the neighborhood and to people to be able to afford some housing. And in regard to the trees, it's true that in the beginning I was a bit accepting, but in the end there's like 2 trees. I'm thinking in the short term, so that they give good shade to the streets, but in the long term, we'll definitely add 14 more trees, and the walkway will look much better, and I think it will really enhance and boost the area. So I just wanted to support the project, and that's it.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for calling, sir.
Of course.
You have 1 question remaining. You have 0 questions remaining.
So
My name is John Nolte, N-U-L-T-Y.
okay, Mr. Nolte, go ahead.
Yes, I'm calling in regards to the project. The project took out a Chevron gas station on the corner there, and therefore it's an empty lot. They took out the gas station, and now they would propose 120-something condos. And part of the planning process is, as the caller had said about the 17 below market rate housing, but condos go for $1 million plus. So in San Francisco, so you're not adding to the pipeline of housing. It's going to take a number of years for this to be built. The trees that are there have been there for a number of years. And so they're mature trees. And I think Chris Buck should answer the question, how old are these elm trees? Because, especially the 2 big ones, because it has a net worth. And it would, those 3 trees are worth more than the proposed 13 trees that are to be planted on the surrounding the property on both 9th and Howard. And that's mandatory for the planning department to put in those trees and space net. So the bulbs can be moved, and it should have been considered by the project sponsor not to put them into the trees onto the corner like that, and right where the 2 trees exist. So I have a problem taking that mature tree that have been there for a number of years, and I would say at least 20 because I walk that street, so I know. So to take them out just to please the developer, I don't think that's right for a living sentient tree. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nolte. And listen, I want to apologize to you too, just as I did to Mr. Clapp. You know, I let that first speaker get a clip. I'm sorry, clip. I let that first speaker, you know, go on a little long about, and this is not the forum to criticize others. Everyone has an opinion, and
yeah, I only had to criticize her because that's not there were rules, and I don't think you went over those rules when you were in the beginning of the hearing.
Yeah. So anyway, I want to apologize for you for cutting you off because I should have cut the other speaker off also.
Okay. Well, that's still not appropriate, though.
Well, it's not appropriate, and that's why.
At the hearing in City Hall, you don't cut off the speaker. You give them 3 minutes to speak. So you at the beginning.
All right, sir. Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
All right. You're welcome.
All right, with that, let me check to make sure no one else has called in. Okay, there's no more callers, so we'll go on to the next item. The next item is order number 203374, removal of 1 street tree without replacement. Chris, do you want to speak to this?
Yes, good evening. This is Chris Buck, Urban Forester with San Francisco Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. This item is for the removal without replacement of one Monterey cypress tree that's in the public right-of-way at Tulare Street, if that's how you pronounce it, Tulare, Tulare Street, Order 203374. So we were contacted by a colleague with Public Works. His name is Elliot Ryan, and he's an industrial electrical mechanical engineer, and brought our attention to a conflict he has with what is actually a control valve. And we'll be looking at those photos of the utility conflict. But long story short, this colleague approached us probably late in 2019 to say that in September of this year, they would be doing maintenance, and that when he was evaluating the condition of the sewer line, he found the conflict here. And so, you know, one of the things we've been talking about a little bit indirectly, but here more directly, is when we have direct conflicts with utilities, some of the questions we are sure to ask ourselves are, you know, can this facility be moved or shifted? We don't want to remove a tree unnecessarily. In this particular case, the nearby Monterey cypress trees are either dead or dying. This one has, you know, fair to poor vigor and has fair structure, but of course it's the healthiest of all the trees there. So there were a number of things that we asked the colleague about this site, and some of the information he provided I'm going to outline, but this is contained within his emails in our file. So this cover, this utility cover, is a cover for a valve, and this is, we've asked, hey, could you relocate this? And his reply was that the relocation of an air vacuum valve assembly to relocate something of this nature would be pretty expensive, something like $100,000 to do. Another point he made was that relocating this would impact the required force from the pump station, which would require shutdowns to coordinate that. His third point was the structure, that the roots are protruding below and beneath and jeopardizing the maintenance and worker safety, that the opening is tilted due to the root intrusion. Lastly, his fourth point was that a portion of this cover, this utility vault cover and structure, will be rebuilt and leveled to be level with the existing grade to better accommodate safe maintenance and access. Again, we had received inquiries from a member of the public who really wanted to make sure that we gathered every possible information about this potential removal, so that when we actually did initiate the removal, we could bring this information to the hearing. So those are some lengthy dialogue we had back and forth with a member of the public, and again, Elliot Ryan with Public Works Mechanical Engineering. One thing to note is, due to the location of the sewer line, which you'll see in one of the overhead images, the diagrams, there's no room to plant the required replacement tree. So our code always says, whenever you remove a tree, replace it, look to another location to replant it. At this point in time, this is removal without replacement because in that immediate proximity, there just is no plantable area. The other area has other Monterey cypress trees, and Public Works will pursue the removal and replacement of those trees at a later date. Right now, there's very few people who use that area. They're essentially serving as habitat, but at a later date, Public Works will return to initiate the removal of the other trees, which are dead or dying, and replace them with large stature mature trees. Unfortunately, there is no room to plan a replacement at this location. And I'm just scanning to see if there's any additional information I'd like to bring for this. Other points that were made by the public is, you know, who's responsible for the tree. trees in the public right-of-way, such as this one, were the maintenance responsibility of adjacent property owners until July 1st of 2017, when Street Tree SF or proposition became effective. So in this particular case, it's now a tree that is a responsibility of Public Works, not the adjacent property owner. In this particular case, the tree needs to be removed for engineers to safely maintain the facility. And we've looked into it as much as possible. We've done a lot of review, pulled up a lot of information that's in the file that we provided to you about all the moving pieces on the necessity for the removal of this tree. So at this point in time, Public Works had initiated the removal of the tree, and it was protested by the public, and that's why we scheduled it for a hearing this evening. Because this is a tree maintained by Public Works, and we got a lot of feedback from the engineer, I didn't require that he attend the hearing because I feel like we've done a lot of research into the specifics. He additionally, the engineer looked into when this facility was constructed and installed, which he confirmed is in 1989. The tree may have been there, but it would have been much, much smaller. So at this point in time, you know, I would say that the Bureau of Urban Forestry is glad that we're not being required to pay for the repairs and replacement of this facility. It is our responsibility, the tree is now, and I do believe the applicant has offered to pay for the removal of the tree. So from the Bureau of Urban Forestry's perspective, this is a reasonable solution. Again, this is a classic example of wrong tree, wrong place. We would never set a tree this close to a utility like this. Unfortunately, it was allowed to occur, and many people have probably looked the other way, but we now have engineers who are saying they can't keep it as is. And that pretty much summarizes the staff presentation. Again, it's the removal of one street tree without replacement. We posted that notice, and it was protested by the public. Thank you.
Very good. I'll give a thank you very much. I'm waiting for any callers to call in. There's none so far. We'll give it a minute because of our delay. Okay, there's one caller, so we'll take the question.
You have one question remaining.
Hi, this is Josh Cook. Can you hear me?
I sure can. Thank you, Mr. for calling.
Thank you, sir. I want to thank, first of all, I want to thank Chris and Marcus over at the Bureau of Urban Forestry. I believe I am probably that member of the public that Chris referred to in his presentation. By the way, I'm just done listening now because I can't actually watch and listen at the same time because things are so out of sync. So I'm just saying, if I miss something, it's because I'm only listening and I can barely hear Chris when he's talking on the phone. So I'm just pointing that out there. But I do want to thank Chris and Marcus for reaching out to me and for really diving in and going into the sort of engineering and schematics of it all. It would seem that based on the size of the tree that it was there first. It is frustrating that the tree now has to go when the city essentially seems to have designed itself into that situation. Additionally, I'm really concerned about the fact that there is not a replacement being done here. This is a pretty big, robust, healthy tree that's doing a lot of good work for our environment. It's a big carbon sequestering species of tree. So if we're going to take this out because now there's no other way, then why are we not doing anything to put those environmental benefits back into the neighborhood? We keep hurting our environment in the middle of a climate emergency, one tree at a time. Last year, San Francisco lost more than 2,500 trees. So why can't we replace, with a biomass formula, replace this tree in a different location? I would greatly appreciate if Chris would go back to the project team and find ways to recover for the environmental losses here, including putting the value of this tree into the Adopted Tree Fund to support the planting of additional trees in this neighborhood and around the city. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Just to make, you said we lost 2,500 trees in the last year. Is that what you said?
We lost 2,507 trees last year.
Great. I appreciate that for that bit of information. I'll wait a moment to see if there's any other callers on this matter. Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item. Order number 203-375, removal of 3 street trees without replacement adjacent to 1910 Baker Street. Chris, do you want to make the presentation?
Thank you. Good evening there. Had trouble with the mute button. Thank you. Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And this is for the application for a property owner to remove 3 street trees adjacent to 1910 Baker Street. And as we'll see in the presentation, this project is proposing the removal of the trees due to the installation of a driveway, a curb cut relocation. So this is removal without replacement. And we'll go through these trees and the site, and then there'll be an applicant afterwards who speaks to the project itself. So the subject trees, there are 2 street trees towards the curb, and there are 2 street trees towards the back of sidewalk. And they're all placed in above ground containers with soil elevated up against the base of the trunk of the trees. So the species is purple leaf plum. These typically flower in late January, early February. Sometimes people call them plum cherries, but you can't be 2 things at once. So they're actually purple leaf plum trees. Overall, they're kind of a short-lived species. And these trees, in terms of cultural care, they've been sort of topped or headed over repeatedly over the years. That often hastens a tree's decline. So, there are some power lines overhead, but overall, the trees themselves are in poor condition. They'd been headed back or topped repeatedly on a regular basis for a number of years. There's some decay in some of the old pruning cuts. Now, there are a number of challenges with this site. So at the staff level, we recognize that the condition of the trees is just not well. And so realistically, sometimes when we view these tree removal applications, not only do we view them from our own department's perspective, are the trees relatively healthy and sustainable? But if we were to end up at Board of Appeals in the future with this case, are these trees that we're going to say to Board of Appeals must remain because they're that healthy and can retain and be remained on site? So that said, the trees themselves are, from our perspective, in relatively poor condition, and they are in planters above grade, which is not ideal for a street tree. So we did approve the 3 street trees for removal. Now, one thing to point out is that there is a street light on the pole next to the driveway, tree on the left or to the north. This tree can't be replanted due to the proximity to the street light and the utility pole in the driveway. So what we did is assessed an in lieu fee, which is a little bit more than $2,100, for the removal without replacement of a tree and the permanent loss of that planting site. So that's something that we've done for the street tree that's to the left of the driveway as you view the property from the roadway. The tree on the far right would remain for now. That tree is not in great condition, but it's not a public safety issue. It's just not it doesn't have the greatest vigor. It looks good for about half the year, and then it fizzles out by summer, and of course, drops the leaves in the winter. So overall, we have 4 trees in the public right of way. That said, we would not typically require or recommend an owner can, at their own discretion, put trees at the back of the curb in the sidewalk and planters, but that's not something that would typically require of them. We want street trees to be very well spaced between other street trees. So really, we end up approving these 3 small plum trees for removal. We want 1 existing tree to remain, but one note is that our urban forestry inspector, in reviewing the utilities and the plans, this tree that will remain can't be replanted in the future due to its proximity to a gas line. So we want to hang on to this 1 tree, but reading the room and knowing that the other 3 trees were not in great condition, to be consistent with how we've handled other cases, we approved those trees for removal, and we assessed only 1 in lieu fee because there's really 1 legitimate planting site that was there before removal, and that was on the other side of the driveway. So we're not assessing in lieu fees for the removal of the 2 sidewalk trees at the back of sidewalk because they're not sites that we typically require someone to plant. So I just wanted to provide a little context on staff level decisions, some of the decision making that went into this, and the overall assessment of the tree and the species. That's largely kind of explains the staff perspective on that. We will now hear in a few minutes from the applicant, and they'll talk more about what they're doing with the project. Again, at the staff level, we try to keep our arborist hat on, so to speak. We're not here to judge the project. We're just here to look at tree health and try to make a consistent recommendation as we've done with similar cases. And reviewing our notes, that concludes the presentation for the removal of 3 trees without replacement at 1910 Baker Street. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So looks like we have 1 caller, so we'll take that call. If there's anyone else who would like to speak on this issue, please feel free to call in.
You have 1 question remaining.
Yes, we can hear you. Can you please state your name?
Yes, this is Amanda Dunbar.
Can you?
Last name is spelled E as in Delta, U-N, C as in boy, A-R. And I'm with Neutral Architects. We're the architecture firm that is proposing the renovation of this property.
Okay.
I'll just like to speak a little bit about the project. So this property contains a residential building with existing 3 units, and it is an existing 3-story building, and we're proposing to add a 3rd story. The proposed project includes working to rearrange the units within the building. So the 1st floor will be split between the 1st and 2nd units, and then the 3rd unit will be on the 2nd and 3rd floor. So the guidelines set forth in the Public Works Tree Planting and Protection Checklist, this project is required to only have 1 street tree, but there, as Chris mentioned, there are currently 4 existing street trees in front of this property. All of them are purple leaf plum trees. None of them are significant, nor are they landmark trees. We're proposing to keep 1 of the trees and then removing 3 of them. 2 of the trees on the property, which are to the north of the property, those trees were proposing to remove because of the location of the new driveway. So on the 1st floor, we're rearranging the floor plan so that it can contain 2 units on the 1st floor. So the location of the garage is shifting toward the north in order to accommodate the 2 units that are located on that 1st floor. So that's why basically the driveway is just moving toward the north, and that's what's conflicting. That's why it's conflicting with the existing 2 street trees toward the north of the property. The 3rd tree that we would like to remove is just due to ease of maintenance, and also, as Chris mentioned, the bad state that the tree is in. As purple leaf plum trees mature, they can produce messy and sour plums that fall to the ground, and so this would allow ease of maintenance for the property owner to, that would be also beneficial for the cleanliness, Canadian cleanliness for the public right of way as well. The property owner will be paying the in-lieu fee. And so we ask that you allow this project to move forward because the existing building is currently unoccupied due to its dilapidated state, and allowing this project to continue will create 3 newly renovated units that will provide additional housing in the area. Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, let me see if there's anyone else. There's one more caller.
You have 1 question remaining.
Hey, this is Josh Clip. Can you hear me?
Sure can. Thank you, Mr. Clip, for calling.
Thank you, sir. I don't personally have a log of how many trees have been lost to driveways in San Francisco, but so it's November of 2019, out of 210 removals, 65 were authorized for new construction projects and construction improvements in private driveways. I'd just like to make the point that more than a quarter of street tree removals since that time have been for those types of projects, and not because the tree was any sort of hazard. Because I am having to now just listen on the phone, I can't follow along because of the delay is so dramatic. I've had to stop trying to watch it on Teams because I can't. The disjunctiveness is much too jarring. I'm just listening along. And so I have a question. I might have missed this because I can't really hear very well from the phone here, whether an in-lieu fee, I think there's an in-lieu fee being paid for one tree. I'm not sure why it's not happening for all of them. And the reason I'm concerned about that is my understanding is that now that we are looking at our our pandemic budget, let's put it that way, the city essentially has $0 to plant new trees. The only funds that we're going to have to plant trees come from in-lieu fees. So we should not be waiving or excusing or letting go of in-lieu fees that are purposefully set aside to plant new trees at the time we have no dedicated budget to make that happen. I want to point out that in 2014, San Francisco rolled out an urban forest plan to plant 50,000 new trees by 2034, which would be roughly 2,500 new trees per year. And since the rollout of that plan, we've actually achieved a net loss over all those years of nearly 1,000 trees. So at the current rate, we're on track to not only completely fail to meet our urban forest plan, we're on track to sequester even less carbon than the city knows we need to sequester to meet even our minimum climate goals. So my request would be that in-lieu fees be assessed for all the trees being removed, not just one of them or whatever is going on here that I couldn't hear properly. But thank you.
Thank you, sir. What I'll do is I'm going to ask Chris to respond because he did comment about the reason that they're only assessing one in-lieu fee. So Chris, if you could respond to that question, please.
Sure, thank you. This is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. It's a great question, and I think one of the things I'd like to do, typically if a question comes up live at the hearing and I'm not 110% sure, what I recommend is that our staff follow up with you as the hearing officer and provide kind of an official response, because what I'm doing is presenting the case as it was handed to me by my colleague. I will look into the applicability of the in-lieu fee for the 2 trees that are back of sidewalk. What I was saying is they're not replantable sites. I will double check and make sure that we're applying this consistently. And so I think I do owe Mr. Clip and you as the hearing officer an official response. Typically what I do is provide that to you really within the next day or two, so that it could be part of the overall findings of the hearing.
Very good. Thank you very much. And Mr. Clip, thank you for raising this issue. Looks like there's one caller left.
You have 1 question remaining.
we'll give it a bit more time just in case there's a problem, but I'm not hearing anything. Okay, hearing nothing, we'll move on to the next. We'll close this one, move on to the next item. Item number 9 on the agenda. Order number 203376, removal of 3 trees at 2760 Divisadero Street with replacement. With that, I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you. Good evening. This is Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. And this next application is for the removal of 3 trees adjacent to 2760 Divisadero. This is a corner property that has trees along the Green Street frontage. And so the subject trees are along the Green Street frontage. The Urban Forestry staff at our Bureau approved the 3 trees for removal, and the public has protested. So the reason on the application stated by the applicant for removal is the removal and replacement of the retaining wall at the back of sidewalk. So as we go through the slides in our presentation, we'll see images of the 3 subject trees and then the retaining wall to the rear. I believe the wall at this point has had the ivy removed. So the subject trees are London plane trees or platanus trees. And one of the things you'll notice about them is that they're being pruned in what the lay person might consider a rather bizarre way. So certain species of trees will often be pollarded, which is a term that's referred to once a tree is very young, you top the tree and make mid-stem heading or topping cuts. And then each year after that point, you continue to prune off the resulting growth. We have some examples of this in front of City Hall at Civic Center Plaza and the bandshell area within Golden Gate Park, in between the museums there. Those are trees that are pollarded. It's really just sort of a cultural practice. Generally speaking, the city is trying to move away from that practice because the trees then serve more as kind of aesthetic oddities and not as trees that are providing a whole lot of environmental benefits and or habitat and other mitigations for urban environments. So these are images that you'll see in a moment, depending on the way that you're listening, of the site along Green Street with the retaining wall. The trees you can see before and after the pollarding or polarding. And on their plans, they show, of course, we require replacement trees, but they do show the replacement of 7 trees. I do want to point out they showed 2 replacement trees being planted on Divisadero, but on Divisadero, the tree closest to the intersection can't be planted because it's too close to the intersection approach. We require a 25-foot pullback as you approach the intersection from the property line. So one of the trees on Divisadero can't be replanted. Now I will say that the 3 trees on Green can be replanted. So 3 trees would be removed and replaced on Green. 2 additional trees would be planted along Green. So along the Green Street frontage, to confirm, it would be removal of 3 trees with replacement with 5, and then the planting of 1 new tree on Divisadero Street where there currently isn't one. So that's the application as we received it. Our urban forestry inspector approved the removal at the staff level. I do want to note, although we're not huge fans of this pruning practice, we have a long way to go before we reach out to every property owner who's been doing this to their trees over the years. With Street Tree SF, we hope to do more outreach and educate the public why we don't we'd prefer not to have the trees pruned that way. The inspector noted that pretty much all the trees in the block have been pruned in this manner. So we will need to look at replacement species and whether or not those would be pollarded again. My hunch is that that is something our inspector said would not occur unless there was some reason for that. So It's removal of 3 trees, replacement with 6, a total of 5 on green, 1 on Divisadero. And we approved the trees, and during the public notification period, we received a protest from the public. The applicant will talk more about the reasons for removal, which have to do with the removal and replacement of the retaining wall. Thank you.
Very good, very good. So we'll go to the calls now. Okay.
You have 1 question remaining.
Hello, this is Charles Mazzola. I'm the general contractor for the project.
Thank you, Mr.
And
Mazzola.
I'll be very brief. Thank you, you're welcome. I'll be brief. Simply, the reason for to get the work done safely, we need access. The 3 trees are in the way, both for access and for safety reasons. The sidewalk just isn't wide enough for us to use the equipment that we need to use to bring the wall down and then to remove approximately 2,000 yards of hard rock underneath the house to do the excavation. We need access from all sides. There is no other option for us to do this than the piece of equipment that we need to use. So to do this safely, we have no other option than to have the trees out of the way.
All right, very good. You're taking the entire wall down along the street there.
Not only the entire wall comes down, yes, and then we go in underneath the house and remove the earth beneath the house to add the new garage and the lower level.
Okay, very good. And Mr. Mazzola, can you spell your last name? Mazzola?
Mazzola.
Perfect. Thank you very much. All right, I'll go to the next question.
You have 1 question remaining.
Josh Cliff here, can you hear me?
Yes, sure can. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. Just a comment about the audio. I could hear that last presenter clear as bell, but half of the person's presentation sounded like he was underwater. So I don't know what's going on with the audio here, but again, from a public participation standpoint, this is, I don't think that this rises to the level of what, I don't think this rises to the level of meaningful public participation. So,
All right. Your comment is noted, sir. Did you wish to speak to the trees at all?
this is my problem. I couldn't hear half of it, so I have a really hard time knowing what to say when I can't really tell what the person's talking about. I think I heard something about pollarding. I tried to follow it on Teams, but the presentation lag so far behind, and I was on the architect of the last agenda item. The presentation was up through well through half of his audio presentation, so I can't really say what he was pointing to or talking about. Or I think he said that these were sycamores that had been pollarded, which was not favored, and something about a construction project. I got more information from the 30 seconds of the last gentleman. He said that they're taking out a wall, going down to the foundation of his house, and something about access. That's literally all the information I have. So it's tough to comment on the substance of something when I have so little information to comment on.
Okay. Let me ask if Chris wants to respond while you're on the line.
Well, but that's the thing is I can't hear Chris. I can hear the last guy.
Well,
Chris sounds like he's a mile away. I don't know what's going on with his audio, but I can't hear it.
I can't speak to that, sir. I'm sorry you're having that difficulty, but I'm not able to respond to that. But your objection is noted to the process and the platform.
Hi, it's Chris with Public Works. Yeah, I don't know. I'm able to hear you clearly, and I can hear the other participants clearly. So I'm sorry about that. What we can do is certainly forward the materials to the caller.
Okay, very good. So Chris will forward you the materials, and you'll have a chance to respond accordingly. Okay. So with that, we'll go to the last item on the agenda. Let me check to make sure there's no more callers on this one. There are none. Okay, so we'll go to the last item on the agenda, order number 203377, various addresses in the Bayview. Removal of one street tree without replacement adjacent to 20 Osceola Lane. This address was previously referenced as 1445 Osceola Lane. Removal of one street tree without replacement adjacent to 12 George Court. This address was previously referenced as 2 George Court. Removal of one street tree without replacement adjacent to 1194 LaSalle Avenue. Removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 218 Cashmere Street. Removal of 2 street trees without replacement adjacent to 2 Dukes Court. The acacia trees are located in the median across from 2 Dukes Court. Removal of one street tree with replacement adjacent to 1535 Newcomb Avenue. The dead tree is located at the back of sidewalk, last tree in the block closest to Lane Street. This order would supersede order number 203084 for a May 11th, 2020 hearing order 203177 for a June 1st tree hearing continued to June 23rd, 2020. Chris?
Thank you. Chris Buck with Public Works, Bureau of Urban Forestry. So I appreciate everyone waiting throughout the hearing here this evening. So this is the 4th time we've tried to have this item, or the 3rd time, but so originally we posted these trees for removal, these 7 trees, and during the 30-day public notification period, we received a protest. Now, our first shot at scheduling this for a hearing in May, that hearing was canceled because we had a clerical issue getting that posted on the website. The issue last month literally was clerical in that we duplicated the hearing order number content of another case. So, in fact, this is our fourth posting of these trees. So the first 3 trees, and we'll go through these photos, the first 3 trees were proposed for removal due to sidewalk damage due to the tree roots. So you'll note, well, you may not note as a hearing officer, but just generally, when we need to make sidewalk repairs, our process is typically to wait, and if we think the tree can't handle it, post the tree for removal and hold off on the work until we can come back and make it do that with a permit. There are cases where we have narrow sidewalks, and opening up that location is more of a hazard than the potential for the tree to fall over. And so in this particular cases, as we looked at the options for these first 3 trees that are subject to this hearing, there's no options for mitigating these removals. We're not installing a bulb out to account for the tree root system. These 3 trees are very tall, and cutting the roots near the base of the trunk long-term will destabilize the trees. They're hanging in there for now, considering that we made this repair late in 2019. But we did cut very substantial roots to be able to make these repairs. So again, that's not our typical practice, but there are occasions when we do need to do that to move forward to make those repairs. Now, both Osceola Lane and George Court have some utility conflicts, and we've been saying on our notices, removal without replacement. However, in preparation for the hearing, this is the 4th time essentially, we really want to see if we can plant replacement trees at these 2 locations. What we can do, and you'll see in some of the images, we actually have the underground service alert utility markings out there on the sidewalk. We will hand dig these 2 sites at Osceola and George Court, and if we don't come across the utilities, we will plant replacement trees. But it will certainly not be the same species. This is a extremely large growing species that was planted in comparatively a very narrow sidewalk. The species is Eucalyptus maculata, and it's not an issue. It's not considered invasive in San Francisco, so that's not an issue whatsoever to us. It's more about we can't make these repairs without cutting roots that destabilize the trees. So we have utilities that run right down the center of the sidewalk. As you can see, it's parallel to the curb and parallel to the home. It's a little bit closer than we want. We want at least 3 feet of clearance, but I think there's enough of a factor here where we could hand dig to look at planting replacement. So for George Court and Osceola, we will commit to hand digging and planting if we don't encounter those utilities. The next case, 1194 LaSalle, is also a sidewalk repair issue, but that one is too close to the intersection approach, so it can't be replanted at that site. Now, can we plant a tree somewhere in the neighborhood? Yes. We can look for a replacement tree at somewhere in the neighborhood. It won't be at the subject tree site, but we can certainly find a replacement tree site in the immediate neighborhood. The last several trees here, the next one is 218 Cashmere, which is the removal of a blackwood acacia tree, Acacia melanoxylon, that has a crack in the main part of its trunk where the main unions join. So this is a real public safety concern. It's hard to see the crack. It's about 10 feet up where the main stems branch. There also is a significant trunk injury. There's no sign of decay, so the trunk injury is less of a concern. It's really the structure of that tree, 10 feet up where all those branches divide. There's actually a crack forming. So that's a pretty straightforward removal with replacement. The next site is 2 Duke's Court, where we propose the removal of 2 Acacia melanoxylon trees. These 2 trees are in very poor condition. We're removing these trees because they're within the key map where we're currently performing work. So that's why we're proposing removal of 2 acacia trees, very poor structural condition with dieback in their upper crowns. And there's no replacement trees in that immediate vicinity due to the placement of existing large stature trees. We can look for replacement locations elsewhere, but it would not be in that immediate vicinity. And then the last tree that's subject of this item is a completely dead tree at 1535 Newcomb near the corner of Lane. It's located at the back of the sidewalk and is completely dead. It is replantable because although it's within 25 feet of the approach of an intersection, it's set all the way back of the sidewalk, so there's no visual impediment to pedestrians. And so in the presentation, what we show is what a healthy tree looks like on the right, meaning it's evergreen, broadleaf, and should appear healthy and vigorous year-round. The subject tree has the orange notice on it, and as you can see, there's no branches, no leaves on there whatsoever. So that is removal with replacement. And again, I just want to reiterate that we will look for replacement trees either in the immediate location and or closest proximity for all of these locations in this item for Bayview. Again, that concludes our presentation for this item.
Very good, thank you. Let me look to see if there's any speakers on this item. There's none at this time, so we'll give it a couple minutes or a little bit of time to here's a speaker. So we'll call them.
You have 1 question remaining.
Okay, I think you're on, sir.
Okay, thank you. This is Josh Cliff, and I'm not going to keep us any longer, really, than we need to be here. It's been a long day already. Okay, I only caught about maybe 25% of what Chris was saying, so I'm kind of piecing this together. What I think I see is that we're taking out 7 pretty big trees and planting 2. I couldn't hear all the reasons. There's something about a branch failure or sidewalks coming up, or I'm not sure what. I couldn't follow along. So again, all I really know is I'm taking out 7 and planting 2. There's been a bit of a theme tonight that we're taking out trees in the Bayview. This is, again, more trees coming out from the Bayview, but I've already pointed out that this is a neighborhood that already suffers from a pretty poor percentage of canopy. And I didn't hear whether there was any consideration for the harm that this block causes to the local environment, to our environment overall. So maybe these trees are going to be replaced or planted in somewhere else. I don't know. I couldn't tell. But if not, if we're at 7 and 2, then I respectfully request that the city do better. Thanks.
Great. Thank you very much, sir. Just so you know, Chris did offer to have you contact him and speak with him, and he'll go over all the details to make sure that you get all the information. And it is also available, the link to this entire presentation, including all the audio and PowerPoints, will be available on a link on the Public Works website. It's sfpublicworks.org, sfpublicworks.org, and there'll be a link on the website that you can look at all of those things. So thank you for your patience on this.
No, I appreciate that. I mean, the website is practically on my speed dial, but what I'm saying is that's not really a substitute for meaningful public participation in creating a public record and a public process. I understand that. I appreciate all the workarounds, but we shouldn't be having to make workarounds when there are platforms that work far better, far better than what has happened here tonight.
Your comments are noted, sir. All right, looks like there's one more speaker.
You have 1 question remaining.
Hi, my name is John Nolte. I'm speaking on behalf of the last 7 trees on the agenda.
Okay, which item are you speaking on, sir?
The last item.
Okay, very good.
Order number 203377.
Okay, thank you.
Again, these are large trees that are being removed, and I hear that there is no agreement on the size of the 7 replacement trees or the 7 removal. So my question is, are there going to be 18 box or 24 box trees for the replacement? Because these are mature trees or at site for the pictures. And then the other issue is I was listening to this hearing on the web, and that platform, it was a lot of background noise, so it was very irritating to go through now 3.5 hours of hearing and not hearing everything that was being said. So this platform is very hard. I believe this is the first or the second time, first time we've had this type of hearing, and so not being at City Hall, and it's very hard for the public to respond. So I think you have to choose another entity to have the experience with, because this one's not working out unless you can get the bugs out of it. And I would appreciate that DPW do its due diligence in another provider for this year.
Very good. Thank you, sir. Your comments are noted and they will be passed on.
All right. Thank you.
No, thank you. And thank you for your time and your patience. So with that, thank you. So with that, let's see here. Let's go. So with that, that's the final item on the agenda. If there are any more comments on any items, or if somebody's called in late, I'll check to see if anyone's called in, and they'll have an opportunity to speak on anything that was before that they have not spoken on. So with that, let's go to that. I'll give it a moment or two to see if anyone calls in. Seeing none, we'll close this hearing. I want to thank you all for your courtesy and your patience as we worked our way through this. So with that, the hearing is closed.